Richard Ashcroft!
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. And I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, whether you're on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, as always, I say it every day, I'll say it every hour, and I mean it every time. Thank you so much for your company. Really appreciate it. Have we got a rip-roaring show for you today? If you miss anything of it, you can always go back and look at my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. We're going to be discussing the police arresting Peter Mandelson yesterday, as we were discussing yesterday, but after warnings that he planned to flee Britain. He denies this. He wasn't heading to the British Virgin Islands, he says, but the police say they had a tip-off. That was the case. Well, it's claimed that the police told him he had a tip-off, well, what is the truth about that? Are we ever going to see all of the documents in relation to who knew what when it came to Andrew and his appointment as UK trade envoy, and indeed Mandelson's appointment as the ambassador to the United States? Because it looks like an awful lot of it is going to be either redacted, there's those big black lines through it, or it's going to be stuff that we don't hear until after any criminal proceedings are complete, if they do go ahead. Well, I don't know if they can go ahead if people are abroad, but we'll see. Anyway, we're also going to be talking about the Greens' extraordinary policy proposals from the Green Party under Zach Polansky. As I was just discussing with JK, I mean, he's been given an incredibly easy ride in many political interviews on mainstream telly, and everyone thinks he's a Mr. Nice Guy. And actually, we are talking about policies that are extraordinarily extreme. Not just on green issues. They don't talk about that anymore. They largely seem to talk about isn't Israel the font of all evil in the world, talk about Gaza and Palestine, but also illegal migrants. They want to give an amnesty to all illegal migrants in the country. Million plus of those people who've overstayed visas and been here for many years, but are also going to get a free house, and they'll be paid a wage, even if they don't work. I wonder what you think of that. I imagine you're completely in favour. I'm just absolutely fascinated by what you think about that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking about jury trials. Oh, yeah, and the small matter of Donald Trump's State of the Union speech, which I think is just about finished. It was a little bit Kim Jong-un in terms of length, but we'll talk about all of that. And I was delighted to say joining me for all the chat today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Morning to you. We confused everyone yesterday with you and Claire swapping today's. Yeah. Everyone's very confused. When's PMQ, she was asking. But no, you've got PMQ today, the joy of that. Could be quite a lively one. Could be quite good fun, that one. Let's start with Mandelson. Because we start with Mandelson quite a lot at the moment. So we saw him getting arrested, and then he was released early hours of the morning, got home about 2 a.m. yesterday, discussed it on the show yesterday, obviously. And then it emerged last night that a lot of journalists had been sent copies of a text message that Peter Mandelson had sent his apparently close friends. One assumes his close friends wanted him to, were expected from him to put this into the media, that he had only been arrested because he'd agreed to do an interview in about 2 weeks' time, voluntary interview in the police station with his lawyer present, and they decided to arrest him completely out of the blue. The police claim they had a tip-off that he was about to head to the British Virgin Islands, and they wanted to arrest him. The condition of his police bail is that his passport has been confiscated. What do you make of that claim and indeed that denial from both him and his very, very expensive lawyers, Mishcon Durea?
Well, it's one of those things where, regardless of what the truth is, none of it looks good, does it? I mean, even we're still talking about Mandelson having to be arrested, whether it's how we got here is almost secondary, I think.
Yeah.
It's quite clear that he would be a potential flight risk, given the fact that he is clearly facing some very serious charges in the form of misconduct in public office, and also he's someone who is pretty footloose and fancy free, shall we say. He's someone who could get away quite quickly if he wanted to. So I think this
and
is...
very rich.
Exactly. And
nice
also
house in Regent's Park. Keep saying Camden. It's in the borough of Camden. It's literally on Regent's Park, the Royal Park. It's very nice.
He's not hard up for a few bob.
No.
At the moment. So this is... Again, this is just something which there's not much we can say, obviously, in terms of how this is going to work out. There's also a lot that we don't know because of how cagey the authorities are about releasing documents, when we'll get them, in what form, how much will be redacted.
We keep having these votes in Parliament about all the documents being released and then committees looking at them and things, but we all know that any criminal proceedings, and obviously both Anderson and indeed Andrew Windsor, everyone's been saying, well, let's stop calling him Mountbatten Windsor, Andrew Windsor, that he has, all these documents that we're supposed to go bring to see everything, but loads of this stuff is going to be redacted. The government is saying, well, we can't release things publicly until criminal proceedings are over. It's like the same as we have when we have inquiries and into these sort of things. No, nothing can happen until after the wheels of justice have turned, and if there are charges brought, if there is a case, etc. Now, I mean, again, there's a lot of ifs there, and again, we need to remember, and it is really important, people are innocent until proven guilty. Okay, a lot of us will say, we've seen these documents for our own, but do we know if these documents are genuine or not? Will be, and what was the motive for these documents being sent, and indeed was it a criminal act or not? And again, these things are still to be decided, and we should go through those proper motions. But again, a lot of people would be very frustrated that a lot of this information is just going to be hidden away from us for, let's face it, years, and very likely until after Keir Starmer is out of office in 29. And I don't think anyone's predicting that Keir Starmer's going to be re-elected as PM in 29.
No, exactly. And that's why there's such a large public interest in these files. It's not purely about what has Mandelson got up to or hasn't got up to. It's also about the questions of judgment that it raises about the Prime Minister, the questions it raises about the Labour Party going back many years, insofar as their tendency to always call upon Mandelson, even in the wake of another disgrace or another resignation in questionable circumstances. Now, I do think that at some point we're going to have a conversation about our processes and laws where this kind of evidence is concerned. We are particularly cagey about what we allow out into the public arena. And obviously there is that question of not wanting to prejudice proceedings and a trial and so on. But I do think that, particularly in the social media age, where there's so much information out there already, there's so much we already know about Mandelson, that I think trusting, future jurors more so, and being a bit more open about what we let out there would probably be the way forward. I mean,
there's a difference between people going, oh, I think someone's guilty, or I think someone's not guilty. That's very different on broadcast, and I completely agree with people having those restrictions on them. But again, as you say, the cat's out of the bag in terms of a lot of this evidence. It's not a jury only who'll see it, or a court. It's stuff that has already been in the public domain. It's the fact that it's in the public domain is the only reason why there is the prospect that there will be any of these charges. I just want to point out that Mishcon Durea, Manderson's lawyers, say there was no plan to move to leave to go to the British Virgin Islands, and Mandelson in in his messages to his friends, is saying there was no plan whatsoever. I want you to see that in the context of a few weeks ago, Dan Needle, who is the founder of Tax Policy Associates, they're sort of tax experts. He said 2 weeks ago, this is a couple of weeks ago, he wrote this. 2 weeks ago, Peter Mandelson told us he had no recollection of planning to buy a £2 million apartment in Rio de Janeiro via a Panama holding company and a Brazilian company. And this is, I mean, it's very, very clear. They'd found emails in the Epstein files. It appears to show he was planning to buy a flat in Brazil using what they called an aggressive and artificial tax avoidance scheme involving a Panama company. And they'd sought advice from Epstein, describing him as your chief life advisor. They asked Mandelson for comment. The comment they got back was, I am making no comment, but for your information, I have no recollection of this proposal or knowledge as to the authenticity of this document. The facts are that neither Ronaldo, Mandelson's partner, nor I have ever owned property in Brazil. We have no association with any company in Panama and hold no funds offshore. I mean, that's very categorical. And Dan Needle pointed out that the next day, or yesterday, we found notarized incorporation documents for the Brazilian company with Peter Mandelson's signature. So in the context of people denying things, I'm just saying maybe be aware that sometimes there are people in this world, no names mentioned, who say things and have very poor recollection of things. But sometimes those things aren't necessarily quite as they frame them. Should I put it that way? Is that legally sound? Anyway, that's
I'm
in
going to
context.
worry about Peter Mandelson because his memory is really bad.
I mean, this is the thing.
He's getting on in years, but he's not that old.
I worried the menopause did it to me, but wow, I don't think he could recollect buying milk yesterday.
Exactly. He couldn't remember potentially trying to purchase this flat, allegedly.
I mean, how many of us would remember trying to spend £2 million on a flat in another country?
Haven't we all been in the situation where £75,000 ends up in a combination of your accounts?
Can't remember.
There's no memory of it whatsoever. This is the problem. I mean,
I don't know how he's going to answer questions.
Stress of the job. He is getting on in years, but that memory is really quite patchy, and it does. You think this could really frustrate his own legal process if he can't recall.
It really is going to be an issue, isn't it? Let's also talk about somebody who has, has some issues with. Should we say the truth sometimes? Donald Trump, and I know. Look, I said. Very, very clear. Last November, he was by far the best choice of the two candidates. November last year on offer. But Donald Trump gave his State of the Union address last night. We went a bit Kim Jong-un here. It was a little bit, Putin and his. It was it 1 hour 47 minutes from start to finish. Talking, his greatest hits. He's got the midterms in November. Very likely that the Republicans lose the midterm elections, as most presidents do. Yeah. Obama did, and he went on to win his second term. So, that is just how things work. But he was sort of trying to big things up, but he's still got problems with the economy. The two big issues for him were the economy and was immigration. And even though actually he's been very successful on the immigration front, he's literally closed the border and he's literally thrown hundreds of thousands of immigrants out. But in the economy, and yes, cost of living is going up, but going up at a slower rate. He's massively losing support in the polls including from his own supporters. But there was also this issue, isn't there, with the Democrats refusing to attend. He is the head of state, refusing to attend this speech, refusing to stand up when he walks in the room, and just showing basic courtesy to the head of state. I have to say that sort of party politicking in that context, I find very tacky.
No, I agree. And I think the Democrats are just carrying on like kind of overgrown college campus students, and they have done throughout the whole...
They're as bad as he is on that front.
It's embarrassing. As you say, these are huge state occasions. A certain level of decorum would be welcome. We've had it in previous years with sort of Nancy Pelosi appearing to kind of applaud him sarcastically. You have people not showing up. You've got people
ripping up of the paper,
wearing certain outfits to send a certain message. I think this is really lame politics.
I don't think the voters like it either.
I don't think the voters like it.
When you're extremes, card carrying, but most people aren't like that. They think people should show a bit of respect. I mean, the same as the Queen giving the Queen's speech in Parliament. It's not the King's speech. Yeah. It's not the King or the Queen's speech. It's the Prime Minister of the day. But they try to make it as unparty, sort of obviously party political as possible, other than the fact it's containing a load of bills that are going through Parliament which are party political. Yeah. But everyone has to stand there and show respect.
No, and it did seem that when he got in for the second time, at first at least the Democrats were responding in a slightly less hysterical manner. You didn't have any of that resistance mentality that you saw in 2016. They weren't throwing their toys out of the pram quite so vigorously. That's gone away now.
Yeah.
Certainly after all of the situation with ICE and the horrific, killings of protesters. And I think they've talked themselves back into this position they were in previously, which is that he's not just a right-wing president we disagree with.
Yeah.
He's kind of quasi-fascistic and must be face down at every single opportunity, which I don't think the voters will take to.
We'll talk a bit more about that with Freddie Gray from The Spectator about hour. We've got a little clip as well, which again, it's just all ugh. But seriously, there should be a legal ban on people speaking for an hour and 47 minutes.
In any context.
In any context. What? So said Julia with a 3-hour show. But you're not forced. You can turn it off if you want. Don't turn it off. Don't turn it off. Let's talk about the Greens, though, because this is a question today. What is your reaction to the Green policy? I really want to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Finally, a bit of scrutiny of Green Party policies, because they were the nice party for years and then we're just concerned about the environment. And actually, for many years, if you looked at their policies on how to deal with climate change and the problems that you may or may not believe exist as a result of that, and whether it's man-made or not, their policies involved incredible amounts of coercion of people in terms of and limitations on people's basic freedoms. The Lib Dems are virtually as bad as are Labour and as were the last lot of the Tory party, really. But this whole idea, controlling what people can eat, when people can fly, whether they can own a car, huge control. But then they've got into Gaza and Israel, and God, I hate it when they play but Zach Polanski is Jewish. Well, you can be a self-hating Jew as much as you want. 85% of Jews in this country are Zionists and believe in the right of Jewish people to have a homeland in Israel. So, you don't have to believe in that and everything, but if you think that Israel's the problem in the Middle East, you're the one who's the problem, in my view. But illegal migration and migration is a big issue. Now, they believe, apparently, always worth testing these things, I find, in reality, that we should have basically no borders and that no one is illegal. They want to give an amnesty if they got into power. And by the way, they're very high up in the polls now. An amnesty to all illegal migrants. That's well over 1 million people. I think if you actually offered that amnesty, I think you'd find it be in the 2 million range. Plus, not just those coming across the boats. And every illegal migrant will be given a free house, an actual home, and paid a wage with no requirement to work and instant access to NHS care. Oh, by the way, they also want basically no limitations on access to porn, no matter how extreme. They also believe that there should be not just legalisation of cannabis, but also cocaine and heroin as well, for everybody. Tom Slater, discuss.
Yeah, porn, drugs and illegal migrants. Put that on a bumper sticker. That seems to be what they're running on.
We're Mad Max territory here, aren't we?
There is no borders, no brains, no idea what he's doing, I think. But this is kind of instructive, I think, because Zach Polanski represents a certain tendency within sort of do-gooding, particularly sort of millennial...
Posh boys.
Posh left-wingers.
It's always poshies.
Which, in their head, all of this stuff is it's kind of the logical endpoint of a lot of their positions. Borders are barbarous. We should be free and easy on absolutely everything. There's no negative consequences from rampant drug use or pornography or what have you. Everything's basically fine, live and let live. But the fact that it lays it out in this kind of stark detail, so something as crazy as not only do we want to give an amnesty to illegal migrants, we want to house them all, give them money, no expectation of work.
Where are they housing them?
There is practically, you were talking about, single-digit percentage of the country who would think this is actually sensible when push comes to shove. So I do wonder whether this is the beginning of him at least getting that extra level of scrutiny that he hasn't had so far.
Yeah, he really hasn't.
Even amongst people who know better, there's been a tendency to take him a lot more seriously than I think he deserves.
Yeah, and everyone goes, he's a really good guy, and he's got a great game on social media. And, although they did, there was a recent party political broadcast which appeared to be filmed from a sort of 1950s council house. People like, so this is how working class people live. Don't think you've been in any people's homes.
Exactly. I haven't seen a sideboard like that in years.
No, exactly. It was absolutely hilarious. But this is a universal basic income. That's about 12 grand a year. That's what they were looking at for that. Basically, and people have tried this. I don't think you need to try out universal basic income. I think there are an awful lot of people, brackets, most people, won't work if they are not required to work. We can see that looking at our own welfare system right now. But I think this is extraordinary. Migrant families would be accommodated in a house or a flat with exclusive use because they're families. Everyone, by the way, will suddenly be bringing a wife and kid. Lone men would each have their own room in shared accommodation. Often they're not forced. They'd have to share. Like, by the way, like lots of people in flat shares who've been born and bred here. But if they claim to be, get this, LGBTQIA+, so lesbian, gay, trans, queer, still don't know what that is. Basically got blue hair and quite ugly with a nose ring. That's basically as far as I can tell. I is indeterminate.
Yeah.
A is I don't have
Interested.
sex. I don't
could go
know.
either way.
Can someone look up what the I is in that? And plus is everyone else. So just a bit weird, and you've got no friends, and no one wants to have sex with you. You're in that category.
Say what you mean, Julia.
No, but that is what that I apparently is intersex.
Intersex, of course.
And of course, millions of those people.
Yeah, exactly. If
but
you
anyway,
lock down the intersex vote,
if you're
on your way
intersex,
to number 10.
you're probably an Olympian if you're intersex. So basically, if you claim to be that, for safeguarding purposes, you will get your own property. So you get the same. You won't have to share a room. Or share accommodation at all. You get your own flat. So if you're an illegal migrant, I would definitely say that I was either asexual. You just say you're asexual. I'm not having sex with anybody, not attracted to anybody, and then you get your own property.
Oh, asexual is... Yeah, okay, this is...
I mean, that's a lot of young men anyway.
These days,
the incels, you know. But this is...
How's the incels?
This is
and the Afghans.
properly insane. There is no other word. This is insane.
Yes. It's like...
Now, they're saying it's a popular policy.
It's like we made it up to have something to take the Michael out of.
Yeah.
Like, this is so... It's like ChatGPT. Could you give me a
clown,
crazy... left-wing Zach Polanski endorsed policy, and you'd end up with something.
But this is the thing. So I mean, look, again, I've always said I'm very clear. You know, you probably guess what guess where my politics lie. Of course you can. I mean, no, but I'm not. You know, I am a floating voter, and I have been for years. But this, what I really object to is when people talk about reform. Even they talked about the Tories being far right at one point, but you know, a lot of people would say we wish the reform being far right and extremist. Yeah. But the Greens are treated as if they're lovely and bundly and nice in their comfy shoes, you know. I mean, and their tie-dye t-shirts. Sorry, if you're going to look at extreme policies, opening the borders to anyone and everyone's free to stay, and you give away houses, whose houses? Whose houses are you giving away? Who's paying that rent if they haven't got a job? They're not paying it on universal basic income. 12 grand a year ain't going to pay your rent. So you're asking other people in this country to basically have more expensive housing, less housing available to them and their children when they grow up, and they're going to be paying for these people. How many boats do you think there will be? You won't be able to see the channel for the number of boats that are going to be coming from France as everyone in North Africa and the Middle East travels through Europe like they did after the Syrian civil war in 2015, through Europe to Britain to get on boats. They're going to basically have ferries operating. Yeah. We're not going to be able to rescue them from the seas quick enough to come over and get their free flat. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of transgender migrants from the developing world trying to knock up Zach Polanski for their free council house. It also doesn't make any sense from the perspective of where the Greens are in terms of their beliefs in the economy. Yeah, what's that got to do with... You know, because they're actually, on paper, against the idea of economic growth. They're not really in favour of... Growth is a bad thing. They don't want to build too much because it's bad for the planet. So how are you going to suddenly accommodate not just the people who need housing who are already in this country, British citizens first and foremost, but also you're going to accommodate all these newcomers? It doesn't make any sense. It actually was a lot more coherent in decades past, where the Greens were actually kind of a bit immigration restrictionist and really concerned about population. And at least that's coherent. I don't like that ideology, but at least it's coherent. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it is just the politics of looking good while staring into the middle distance and mouthing platitudes. But it's sixth form stuff, but it's not being properly challenged. And again, here's my thing. I'm just so glad they're finally being properly challenged in the front pages of newspapers looking at their policies, and people go, oh yeah, it's the right-wing press going for the Greens because they're up in the polls. No, we're rattled, Julia. Yeah, we're rattled. I'm not rattled. I've been reassuring people. As soon as the Green Party get the same level of scrutiny as, do you remember when everyone said, oh, you can't have Nick Griffin on from the BNP League, you can't have him on Question Time, even though they were doing very well in European elections when there was, under PR. You can't have him on mainstream television. You'll just promote his views. I was always in favour. Put him on Question Time. Let people question him. They put him on Question Time. They plummeted in the polls. When there is no scrutiny of these people, when there is no actual, well, how are you going to cost that? What is the purpose of that? What is the logical outcome of what you're proposing? As soon as you have that, the public go, oh, hold on a minute, these people are either dangerous or a bunch of clowns. In the case of the Greens, I would say very much both. But I thought they were dangerous even just on their climate change policies, in terms of what, putting us back in caves to all intents and purposes. Zach Polanski, you are welcome to come on the show at any time. I will give over any show at any time to you so we can have a proper debate about this, because I genuinely think you are both absolutely, completely and utterly crazy and also terribly, terribly dangerous. I really, really do. If you want to prove me wrong and you want to prove to all your wonderful followers that I owned Julia Hartley-Brewer, feel free to come on at any time. The invitation is open to you. Right now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Do get in touch on any of the topics we're talking about, but particularly want to hear from you on these Green policy, particularly their planned immigration policy. This is what the documents that have been seen by newspapers, and you think, oh, is this just some silly person who's proposed this as opposed to policy? No, the Green Party have said they are proud of this policy. They've officially confirmed that it's true. 10:25 is the time. This is Talk. Get in touch. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:28 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 about these. Frankly, I'm like... not being party political, no, I'm just judging it as a sentient human being. Insane Green policies when it comes to immigration. Anne is on the line in Sussex, wants to have her say. Hello, Anne.
Hello to you, Julia.
Hello.
Julia, if I said to you, or anyone, 40 years ago, do you know what's going to happen? We're going to, in the future, we will not know what a woman is, have children in school told, which there have been for the last 8 or 10 years, you can be a girl if you want to, or a boy, a different gender. If I told you half of the things that were happening, nobody would have believed them.
Not at all.
But they were planned. Some of them were planned. If anybody wants to look it up and make up their own mind, one, the Lucas Trusts, which was the Lucifer Trust. I urge people to look up everything that that woman and her coterie planned, and they are really supported by many world leaders, and certainly the Greens, the Lib Dems and Labour, particularly, even if there are some really good people still in those parties, but their basic philosophies behind them are to actually get rid of most of the values of the West.
I do think it's very important people just to understand how much, sort of the climate change hysteria, how much the pro-immigration stuff, how much the pro-LG, not LGB because that's a completely separate thing, but the TQ and all that nonsense, how much this stuff is being pushed by foreign governments and agencies and everything to try and undermine values, to create disputes, to undermine our economies, to undermine our way of thinking in the West. That's not conspiracy theory. That's genuine.
Well, it is, and it would not be allowed in Russia, just think.
No.
China. It is to undermine the West.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, we don't have a really good education system.
Yeah.
So most people don't know what's going on and wouldn't believe, some wouldn't believe it if you told them. It sounds like, as I say, conspiracy theories, which I think you said, but actually we've got to look at the motives behind, and they absolutely dislike the West. They dislike Britain and our Christianity. They hate Judaism. It's a big thing that's being pushed on us, and I just want people to say, don't just listen to the other stations and the media. You won't get the truth there. You have to find out for yourself.
No, that's a fair point. I think people are just completely unaware. Again, so many of the people working in the mainstream media, the BBC and others, they're fully signed up to a lot of this madness themselves. Thank you for that, Anne. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, sun's out. Fantastic policy from Zach. 100% supportive of it. Brilliant.
I have a funny feeling there may be some sarcasm there, Andrew.
No, it's just brilliant. So all the trendy left is all those people with the mental health fringe, like the lady in charge of education. So bring it out.
So you're in favour. The madder they are, everyone will go over to them. That's absolutely fine. No, there's no doubt at all we are seeing a massive splitting of the vote on the left. So we've got Reform taking votes from the Tories and, interestingly, from Labour. And we've got the Greens taking a massive load of votes, and Lib Dems too, but particularly the Greens from Labour. We are seeing the two biggest parties completely getting splintered. But it does look like that, Labour is getting it from both sides, whereas the Tories are only getting it from one side. We are in completely different territory.
Yeah, but the thing is, Julia, if he gets this policy out there, do you know nobody knows how many illegal immigrants are in this country? No one.
No.
So
the estimates around about 1 million, I think, are a massive underestimate.
When you drive around the country or go on a train, the farmers say the most of the countryside you see is 40%. This is a big country. We're a small country, but we're big. Say those numbers were 5 million.
Yeah.
People would realise exactly how much it would cost them. It's a brilliant idea because it exposes the real problem.
That's my thing. Just tell me what you really think. Tell me what you really plan to do, and then we can analyse it. But we absolutely need some proper analysis. Bearing in mind, half of the people doing the interviews on a lot of other mainstream stations actually do believe in open borders. Until of course, the reality hits them. But these are the same people. It's like the people at Glastonbury going like, "Oh, there shouldn't be any borders." I hate to tell you, there's a very large fence separating you and the people who didn't pay 350 quid for their ticket. And they're perfectly happy for that border, aren't they?
Yeah, you put a reporter this morning into Whipps Cross Hospital. That'll show you illegal immigration. The waiting room in accident emergency there, they'll be crawling up the walls. It's that at the point of access to the free stuff is where you see illegal.
I couldn't agree with you more. Andrew, thank you very much, dear. We're going to take a quick break, 10:33. Up next, we're going to be talking to the spectators at Freddie Gray about what Donald Trump had to say at great length at his State of Union address last night. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 10:35. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater's still with me, and we're Talk, the home of common sense. Wonder how much common sense we got last night from Donald Trump at his State of the Union address. 1 hour, 47 minutes it lasted. Let's face it, most films are too long these days, aren't they? And actually, that would be short for a film these days. But I'm not sure I could manage 1 hour, 47 minutes. One person who's required, because of his job, to watch it all is Freddie Gray, Deputy and US Editor of The Spectator. Good morning to you, Freddie.
Good morning, Julia. Slightly sleep deprived.
Yes. Did you survive the whole thing?
Well, it's hard to focus on it because it just went on so long. And I think Samuel Johnson said of Paradise Lost, nobody wished it had been longer.
But this is the thing. I mean, normally they're around about sort of 45, 55 minutes. They usually don't go over an hour. He always goes on longer. He's getting a little bit, Donald Trump, bit Kim Jong-un, isn't he? In his just sort of, everyone's going to have to listen to me. But of course, a lot of Democrats didn't. There was a lot of Democrats who refused to go to the State of the Union. A lot, refused to stand. We've got a clip of that in just a couple of moments. But it's become so much more of a partisan event than it was under previous presidents, hasn't it?
Well, yes, I think it's a shame that the State of the Union has become this kind of massive set piece in American politics, because in the 19th century, it was just a written letter to Congress that was read out. And even Nixon did that once, I think. But now it's this hugely big event. And when it grew, it was seen as this moment of unity. And now it's become this sort of moment of division. And Trump is very canny and clever in the way he exploits that. I mean, he did it in his first term, too, in his State of the Union addresses, where he just says something that most of the country will massively agree with and prompt a standing ovation from the Republican side. And the Democrats all sit there looking glum and miserable. And yesterday, the biggest one was when he said, do you think the government of America should put American citizens ahead of illegal immigrants? And of course, the Republican side stood up and the Democrats all sat looking bolshy. And that's just an obvious win for Donald Trump.
But again, they're dumb to do it. I mean, they've shouted out of these. And as you say, this used to be something where, you had these candidates, one was Republican, one was Democrat, but then they were president and they were the president of the whole nation, the head of state. But now it's just seen as another, it's almost like sort of PMQs, party political bashing. Let's have a little watch and a listen just after, Donald Trump telling Congress to stand up if you support Americans over illegal migrants, and they did not stand up. Let's have a little watch and listen of what happened next.
You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
I mean, a lot of loud heckling there. And for those who couldn't quite hear, but if you were watching, you'd have seen the Democrat Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She could be seen heckling the president repeatedly, labelling him a murderer. That's an extraordinary state of affairs in a formal situation like that for the State of the Union address.
Yes, and again, it just plays so well into what the story that Trump wants to create, which is that the Democrats are on the side of crime, they're on the side of fraud, they're on the side of illegal immigration. It's perfect theatre for Trump, and that's why he clearly was reveling in it. I do think, however, the speech didn't move things on in quite the way some of his supporters hoped it would. He's still just blaming the Democrats, and that's effective. Yeah. But we're now a year into his administration. I think there's a lot of concern about the economy. There's a lot of concern about foreign policy. He did talk very positively about the economy, but as everybody knows, Americans are not feeling as good about their finances as Donald Trump.
The cost of living is still going up. I mean, that's the same as everywhere. It's like even if the rate of inflation's gone down, it's still going up. But it's interesting also, the two policies he's elected on, it's the economy and it was dealing with illegal immigration. He's actually been very successful on the illegal immigration issue, deporting people en masse, closing the border, and yet he's now really unpopular on that policy because of those two shootings by ICE agents, which have really shocked the nation. And again, were clearly unnecessary shootings, I would say, in both cases. But nevertheless, they are as a result of protests supported by the Democrats, to basically stop ICE agents doing the job they are paid to do, sanctioned by Congress and with the mandate of the American public too.
Well, and Trump can point towards a positive story related to the deportation strategy, which is that crime in urban areas, yes, it's meant heavy military-style policing in many cities across America, which is not popular, but crime is falling dramatically. Violent crime is falling dramatically.
Sounds good to me. I'll take that on our streets any day of the week.
And that's going to be a big story for Trump as the midterm elections approach in November. I think also very interestingly was the fact he sort of brushed over the Iranian question, which is the big issue at the moment that's concerning the White House, concerning the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the military. He just said he had one line, which was, or the key line was, we want to hear those secret magic words, we will never, ever have the nuclear bomb, and then we will leave Iran alone. But I think most analysts think he's parked this huge armada just outside Iran. It's anticipated that he's about to strike them. What will that do? Does he actually want to do it? Are the consequences going to spool out of control? There's lots of interesting questions there, and it's interesting he didn't focus on it.
No, indeed. And we know, of course, that there was, I think, a standing ovation for him saying he will never let Iran get nuclear weapons. And it's the biggest exporter of terrorism in the world, not just in the Middle East. I think most people would agree with that, is how you go about doing it. But he did say he wanted to do it diplomatically. But again, the best way of doing that diplomatically is to have that massive build-up. I mean, it's the biggest build-up of military might by the states since 2003 in the invasion of Iraq. You think the mullahs might take it seriously. But again, you can't negotiate with complete and utter religious lunatics. That's your fundamental problem.
Well, quite. And I think anybody who was thinking that the mullahs will just fold is learning that they're unlikely to fold. So what happens if they don't fold? The consequences could be quite terrifying.
Yeah, indeed. Let's also talk about Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, the former ambassador to the United States, the UK. He was arrested the day before yesterday, released the early hours of yesterday morning. He's put out a statement, basically, via, that usual, slipped in via friends and text messages to them the early hours of yesterday morning, saying, he'd had a planned voluntary meeting to meet with the police in a couple of weeks' time. He's cooperated with all the searches of his homes in London and in Wiltshire. And then out of the blue, the day before yesterday, he's arrested by the police. Now, including his lawyers, Mishcon Durea, have got involved to say, it is completely false to claim, as they were told by the police, that they believed that he was a flight risk and that he was planning to move to the British Virgin Islands. And that was why they arrested him. In that case, his passport has been confiscated. A lot of people are very confused by this because the British Virgin Islands, of course, is a British territory and has an extradition clause. So if, and it's big if, he were going to do that, strange place for him to choose to go. But what do you make of this claim and counterclaim and the decision to arrest him?
Well, we know he likes islands. But
he's been to Little St James, hasn't he?
But I think yes, it's a complete mystery really, and it's very, very odd. I think the sort of upshot for it probably is just it's more bad news for Starmer. There's talk in the papers today that this is becoming Starmer's Watergate. It's just going to drip, drip, drip. What did he know about Mandelson's appointment? When did he know it? Why are the files being hidden? These questions are going to keep coming. And Starmer can talk pretty hard against Andrew, the former prince, but he's much more nervous on this, and perhaps with good reason.
Well, indeed. I mean, a lot of people are asking, and it's been brought up in Parliament as well. Isn't it? We've had this searching and arrest of Prince Andrew and now Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. We've had the search and arrest of Mandelson, and yet we haven't seen any arrests, any investigations, police investigations into anyone implicated in the Epstein files in America. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I'm not often very patriotic, but I do feel actually we do have a bit more of a culture of shaming in our country, which is perhaps eventually. Whereas in America, there's a sort of, there's a sense that the elite is terrible and it's powerful and it controls things. But there's also a sort of acceptance of it that I'm not sure you get in Britain. And you see this with this hostility towards the royal family now. Over this and this hostility for the government over Mandelson, that British people sort of do have that more tabloidy, instinctive, no, they can't get away with that sense, and the police do act.
I mean, I like to think it means that, we come up looking better than the Americans, and that, there is a point when things come out that money and power don't get to talk as well. But again, a lot of people still feel that, there has been a long-standing establishment cover-up, and they fear there will continue to be one. But there's been a lot of talk about the Epstein files in terms of like the Telegraph in America exposed these storage units which Epstein had, I think 6 different storage units around America. When his house was first raided, those allegations were first made against him involving numerous dozens of young women who, as girls, had been abused by him, they claimed. They found all his houses to be cleaned up. There were no hard drives, there were no computer files. Clearly, a man who was a financier who apparently had installed, and that's on record, he had installed video cameras and CCTV in every room in his house. Oh, but there just happens to be nothing on record of any of this. Clearly, there was a cover-up by him. Do you think we're ever going to find any of that information?
I don't know. I sometimes think the Epstein story will just never stop. It will just bubble on forever. I think in America, yes, you're quite right to point out that the public figures have not been arrested in the way or disgraced in the way that they have in Britain. Remember that Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison.
Yep. And she's a Brit.
But I do think in America, justice is maybe grinding a little bit more slowly, but it will get there. There's certainly the public appetite for it. But I think, the sort of fashionable thing to say now is that the whole Epstein story is a hysteria. It's a kind of bubble and mania.
Yes, I've seen a lot of podcasts saying this, yeah.
A lot of podcasts saying that. And there's an element of truth to that. Obviously there's a lot of madness that attaches itself to the story.
And Jeffrey Epstein wasn't Satan. He was an awful man and the people around him. But yes, having lunch with him doesn't mean you're a paedophile, Well,
quite. And but I think the thing that drives the Epstein story is this just fundamental sense that in the 90s and noughties, there was this very rich, very privileged elite that thought they could live by their own rules, and that the people were just completely beneath them. And I think that sense of the injustice of it, and the criminality linked to it.
I think they were quite right, and that they could live like that, and they continue to do so. And I don't think anything's changed. I think that is how the elite think.
Well, it is indeed. But some of them are finding out that justice does catch up with them eventually.
Yeah, indeed. Great to talk to you. Thank you very much. Always great to have you on. Freddie Gray, Deputy Editor and US Editor of The Spectator. Covered a lot of ground there. Tom Slater, just on the issue of going back to, we think, the 2 people who've been arrested, not charged, professed innocence to any crime that's alleged against them, Andrew and Mandelson, and then Ghislaine Maxwell, who's 100% guilty as sin and was definitely abused. She wasn't just procuring the girls, she also abused these young women. Bang to rights, glad she's in prison, hope she never gets out. Jeffrey Epstein, killed him. Well, I don't think he killed himself. I believe he was murdered in prison, but that, there we are, as most people I think do. But basically this has been, it's only Brits who seem to be getting their collars felt when there are loads and loads and loads of people who are implicated in the Epstein files who are American.
There is that. I also think it's telling that, at least in this current wave, kind of putting Maxwell to one side, this is all about misconduct in public office. It's not about, the kind of broad allegations and swirling rumours about their involvement in alleged sex trafficking. And I think that's part of the problem, is that people have been waiting for a sort of smoking gun on that side, which hasn't really been provided even by these files. So, yes, we have moved quicker over here, but it's because of the fact that they were holders of public office and are suspected to have abused that, not because they've suspected to have abused any young girl or individual.
Well, I wonder if anything does charges get brought and anyone does go to trial, whether or not they'd still be eligible for a jury trial, because we've seen the announcement, the reforms, and they urged you push those through, even through the Commons, even before the local elections in May, by the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy. We're going to be talking to former Attorney General and KC Sir Michael Ellis about the risks there up next. This is Talk. of breaking news in the last couple of moments. Extraordinary news. The police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's his 66th birthday today. What a birthday present that is.
Mr. Mandarin, how long do you think that you can stay on the island?
We're going to stay forever. Our rights have to be respected now. We're going to stay.
Do you expect Jeremy Clarkson to become a part of your new party?
I can tell you, if Jeremy Clarkson decided to darken my doorstep, I would be absolutely delighted.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:50, I wished away the day. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And let's talk right now about jury trials, because we had that shock announcement, nowhere near, by the way, the Labour manifesto from the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary David Lammy a little while ago, that they were going to abolish jury trials for all but the most very, very, very serious crimes. Like only about 3% of alleged crimes would go to juries. And now we're told that a lot of those reforms will actually try and be rushed through the Commons in a matter of weeks. Well, let's talk about this with Sir Michael Ellis KC. He's a barrister and he's also a former Attorney General for the Conservatives. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks very much for doing this. I think a lot of us were absolutely horrified and outraged, including a lot of Labour MPs, actually. We'll talk to one later in the show, Carl Turner, about this plan to abolish jury trials for all but the most serious crimes. The reality is, the vast majority of crimes aren't tried by a jury already, are they? But how important is it that people have a right to a jury trial for what we would call lesser crimes than murder, manslaughter and rape?
Well, Julia, this is another car crash policy from this government. Not only is it not going to work, it's not going to deliver what the government claim is their intention by abolishing jury trials for about 50% of the cases that currently have jury trials. So it's one thing to push a policy that people don't think they like. It's another to push a policy that everyone who's an expert in this field says isn't actually going to work. And there's a principle involved too, which is the principle of fair justice and equal justice under the law, which is a very apt thing to discuss at the moment. And the reality is, the reason for delays, the reason for a court backlog at the moment has got nothing to do, Julia, with juries.
No, there is no shortage of people who can be legally required to turn up to sit on a jury, as I was a few weeks ago. The shortage is of courts being open and of judges and of barristers and the like. But this is the thing, we're told this is going to make a real difference. It's not, I mean, it's literally not even going to touch the sides of the backlog, is it? It's
not going to touch the sides. So about 95% of all criminal cases are dealt with in the Magistrates' Court anyway. Only the top 3 or 4% of cases are dealt with in the Crown Courts. Many of those will plead guilty or be resolved or collapse in some other way. A tiny percentage of cases have a jury trial. More than 50% of those end in conviction. Juries themselves probably only add a few hours to a case, whereas many people will find that if they're charged with an offence, it's multiple months, sometimes even years, before the police end up charging and the Crown Prosecution Service end up making a decision about charges. So those are the years of delay. The court system itself is not responsible for that, except we need more courts working because many of them are dilapidated, no heating, no electrics, no plumbing. So not all of the courtrooms are working. That's underinvestment. Not enough senior judges. But the principle of having a jury goes back 800 years. I mean, we exported this principle around the world. It will make a difference. And it's going to backfire, Julia. And I'll tell you why. Because the government wants to save a few pence with this madcap idea. And they'll end up spending more money on the prison service because we'll end up with more convictions. Because if you have a judge sitting alone, he or she is likely to be more cynical about a defence. He's likely
because they've seen it all before. A jury will perhaps give a defendant more of a benefit of the doubt. And we know in the Magistrates' Court the conviction rate is much higher than in the Crown Court. So you're going to get more people sent to prison, more people having to be invested in the prison service.
for a policy that is going to backfire, is not going to bring about what it
is quite extraordinary. We're told there's going to be some extra money being put in to have more court sitting days and the like. But again, it was something like a third of courts aren't sitting at any one time. When I did jury duty a few years ago, I was actually Southern Crown Court, so impressed with the clerk, so impressed with the judge, so impressed with the procedure, and really impressed with the jury I sat on in terms of how seriously we all took it. And I felt a renewed sort of sense of belief in our system. But here's the thing: although we've had the jury system, you cannot be having your freedom taken away from you unless you've been judged by your own peers, not someone over there, people just like you sitting there and looking at it, objectively. And the wisdom of crowds, very, very, very well documented. Although we've seen some jury decisions lately that I would massively question the wisdom of. But we've exported this around the world, and the Anglosphere world, the juries are normal. But not so in Europe, in Germany, countries like that. Well, I don't think we all walk around saying, well, you wouldn't get a fair trial in Germany. They don't have juries. They have panels of judges. Why is our system so much safer than their system?
Well, people have different traditions, of course, but the system has worked very well. I spent 17 years in the criminal courts prosecuting and defending as a barrister in practice before I went into politics and later became Solicitor General and Attorney General. I have great faith in the jury system. I've invariably felt that whether they acquitted or convicted, 9.5 times out of 10, I sort of understood and agreed with why they'd done that. I just think that it's not a flawless system, nothing is, but it's the best I think that human beings can
come up with.
Yeah,
so why get rid of it?
It works well.
What do you make of again, this is such a classic New Labour thing, which is that Lamy pushing for judges to be assisted by AI. Now, I'm using AI quite a lot. You can make quite funny pictures of, Peter Mandelson sipping a cocktail on a beach in the British Virgin Islands within seconds. It's great fun. I can check some facts about what has someone tweeted about this subject or over the years, etc. But I've also looked up things where I've got literally, this person, tell me about this person, as if it was a Wikipedia check. And AI genuinely has come up with that this person, I was saying, had a 3-year prison sentence for a conviction for something. And tell me more about this. Turns out in the next, response, he hadn't at all. That is incredibly dangerous. We've seen the Maccabi Tel Aviv case
exactly.
That they used AI pretending that there was a match that had been played that had never existed. How can we trust AI being used in our court system?
We can't trust it at the moment. It's not ready yet. Whether it will be in due course, I don't know. But as you say, Julia, the Maccabi case is an example where the police said AI had an hallucination, I think is the word.
But this is very common.
It's very common, and there have actually been cases where lawyers, both in the US and I think here in the UK, have got into trouble for citing cases to the judges in court that they had looked up on AI, and there were another hallucination. The case didn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's not, we can't trust it yet. Maybe it can help in some administrative and clerical things. But I'd just say the irony is, though, talking of AI, that part of the real reason for the delays, there's nothing to do with juries, is because of the increased amount of digital data as evidence. And that actually is one of the real reasons for delays in the court system.
Going through someone's phone and all their emails, and we've seen current cases at the moment as well. There's so much more I'd like to talk to you about. I must come on again soon. So appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, listening to all that, only got a few seconds, but jury trials, it's just not the problem that needs to be solved.
No, exactly. It's not going to help clear the backlog, but what it will do is upend an ancient liberty that we had in this country, and the casualness with which that is being done is almost the most alarming.
And the idea of doing
it
with speed, pushing it through the Commons, but it wasn't there's no mandate for it. There's no manifesto pledge to say they would do this. It came out of the blue. And all the experts say this is a bad idea, and also as those of us who think they probably one day will be charged with a crime that they haven't committed, I'd like to know that I could trust a jury of my peers to acquit me. I mean, I think there's such an ancient right we don't want to lose. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Green policy, you name it, whatever you want to talk about, give us a call. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's just approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. If you are listening on DAB Plus Radio, if you're listening on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or watching on your connected device, either way, delighted to have your company. If you've missed anything from the show in the first hour, do have a look at my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, and then not only will you never miss a thing, I can stop having to say that every hour. Would that not be in all of our interests? Anyway, coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about the police arresting Peter Mandelson, claiming there were warnings that he planned to flee Britain, something he has denied. Plus, Donald Trump's State of the Union address last night, and illegal migrants would, this is mad, under the Green Zach Palensky Green leaders' policies, be given a free house and paid a wage, the basic living wage, even if they don't work or even seek work. I'd just love to know your thoughts on that, because I imagine you think that's a darn good idea. And the British public will absolutely love it. About time we had a bit of scrutiny about those green policies. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the topics we're talking about, but in particular about illegal migrants getting a free house, paid a wage even if they don't work, under the Green Party's planned immigration policy. This is a genuine policy. It's not just some madcap thing like a party conference where some lunatic has proposed it. No, they say they are proud of this policy. Love to know what you think. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate and text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Joining me for the chat today is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. We will come back to Mandelson and State of the Union speech. But again, we've just got to talk about this green policy because it is properly...
gift that keeps on giving this
bonkers,
thing. Yeah.
Isn't it? But this is the thing. We were talking a bit earlier, the Green Party is one of those parties that they're a nice party, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're nice. They care about the environment. Don't you care about the future of children, Tom? They're those people. And they turn up in their sort of fringed clothes and their weird hair, and they're kind of nice. I've never thought that green policies are nice because they always involve us getting poorer and restricting our freedoms.
Not
because
nice either.
The only people who would be able to drive where they want, get on a plane where they want, wear what they want, eat what they want, would be people who are rich and able to buy their way out of it. It's a hair shirt policy. I'm not a fan of those people. I think we should all get as much as we can out of life. We're here for one life. Fill your boots. Oh yeah, and I want people in the developing world to have what we have too. That would be a good policy. Then they got into Gaza. Yeah. Big time. And we've had this very strange alliance between the Greens and the right-ons of the world, who pro-liberal, libertarian, everything, and the most conservative people on the planet. Islamist extremists, which is what the pro-Gaza, pro-Palestinian movement also is, and this very strange movement between the two. And then they've added in, turns out they don't think we should have borders, and this particular policy is about that. And this is basically, there is no such thing as an illegal migrant. The immigration policy would mean anyone who arrives, you can use the NHS for free the moment they enter Britain. To be fair, that is what migrants illegal migrants get to do, and a lot of legal migrants too. They would be allowed to work with no restrictions, as a world without borders, but crucially they would be given a free house, a free home. If you're a family, you get a free home. If you're a man on your own, you get your own room, but you don't have to share it. If, however, you claim that you are LGBTQIA+, so lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, intersex or asexual, if you don't have sex or don't fancy anyone, plus still haven't worked out
is that
what the
an
plus
oppressed
is.
group? Not fancying people?
I think just quietly just don't have sex and no one's interested.
No one's ever gotten beaten up because they didn't want to have sex with someone.
You walk around not wanting to have sex with anyone. Yeah, exactly. But also, I've never worked out what the plus is. It's everyone.
Yeah.
It's basically every flag in the world.
Exactly.
But
in
basically,
case we've missed anyone.
for safeguarding purposes, you would get your own property if you got. I think we can safely say we're going to have an awful lot of queer illegal migrants arriving.
Yeah.
Plus, they can take up work if they want. But they don't have to.
That's nice.
because they would get basically a basic living wage, and that's right. I think it's always when they've tried it around the 12 grand mark. That, by the way, won't cover your rent. I don't think that will cover rent for any property.
Get you a very nice e-bike.
Yeah, exactly. So we'd be paying their housing benefit as well, and you'd have no requirement to get a job or to even be seen to be looking for a job. Proper, insane, sixth form politics, stupid kid at the back policy. And I'm sure the BBC will still be clapping along, won't they?
Oh, yes. Surely this is the point at which the scrutiny has to kick in.
Do you think?
Because Zach Plansky has been treated with a level of kind of kid gloves that I think is really staggering, given the sorts of things that he is saying. As we've been talking about in terms of this particular policy, it sort of reminds me of during the US election, where because the Democrats have been running around saying such crazy things for so many years, Donald Trump could just turn around to Kamala Harris and say, this is a woman who wanted to give free sex change operations to illegal migrants in prison.
Yeah.
Just kind of tick, 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 tick.
And she couldn't deny it because it was true.
She actually had said that. I think this will be hung around the Greens' neck in every debate, every hustings, every
But this
time
is the
they come
extreme.
up against it.
When people talk about reform as being an extremist party, so deporting people who are illegal migrants benefits only for British people, British citizens. I mean, not allowing anybody who can't speak even the language to become a British citizen just because you've come here. You know, I get. These aren't extreme. You can disagree with the policy. That's fine, but you can't call it extreme.
Totally
this
normal,
was what
as of 5 minutes ago.
And again, majority opinion even on the left. Same with Donald Trump, outrageous. He's deporting illegal migrants back across, or closing the Mexican border. It's like to illegal migrants. Obama used to put out campaign videos where he celebrated the fact that he was deporting illegal migrants. That used to not be a left-right issue.
Deporter-in-chief, they used to call
But this thing, what is discussed as extreme in our mainstream media and politics right now is the stuff that is a mainstream view. So, you extremist, you don't think that a man who puts on a wig and puts fake boobs on and takes drugs, whatever, it should be allowed into a girl's toilet. No, I don't. And we used to all agree that was a good idea, that they shouldn't. And now you're the extremist. But actually, on every single front, the Greens are way out of kilter with the general public of this country.
Exactly. I mean, immigration is not even a 50-50 issue in this country. There's a very sizable majority of people think that immigration is too high, that illegal immigration is out of control.
Labour voters included.
Labour voters included. It goes right across the demographics. I think it's north of 50% of ethnic minorities now also believe that immigration is out of control.
Well, they're people. Ethnic minorities often tend to be working class and people who are living in the areas where they're most affected, and they're the ones who are competing for housing, for jobs, for school places.
And especially in the context of illegal migration, people whose parents or grandparents came over in the 60s or 70s, did it in the right way, and often faced a very hostile welcome when they got here, but toughed it out and contributed and became citizens and so on. Particularly irked by the queue jumping, as they see it, a very British thing to be irked about, that has happened with illegal migration.
You know you're British when you're worried.
Exactly, when you're tutting about that. So this is completely out of bounds, and I think it's something which really makes the idea of them being a kind of a proposition for government, shall we say, sort of blows it out of the water. All that being said, I think one thing that's worth bearing in mind when the Greens are concerned is they really appeal to not huge, but still substantial kind of portion of the public, graduates, maybe a little bit downwardly mobile.
A lot of people are graduates now, but this particular kind of graduate.
Exactly. Yeah, in places like London and Bristol and Manchester and Oxford and Cambridge, who are irked because of the fact that they're not doing as well as their parents did at their particular time in life. You know, they probably will end up buying a house at some point when mum and dad free up the money for them. But at the same time, irked, it hasn't happened quite so quickly. And also that kind of millennial generation, of which I'm regrettably a part. But there is a type of voter there who aren't going anywhere. Vote for Corbyn very enthusiastically. Yeah. Zach Plansky is the kind of follow-on from that. It's also quite a big generation, so they're going to be quite electorally important as we go forward in terms of the numbers of them.
That's a very good point.
So so they're not going anywhere. I suppose the thing is, even though it felt like wokeness, insaneness was not back for various years, it will still be a pole and a position in our politics that needs to be contended with. But if you go around saying things like this, you're never getting anywhere near power.
No, exactly. But then you've got also the reality check of those people when they actually are trying to find a job, trying to find a home, trying to realise they're paying taxes themselves, and they realise, oh, this is how much it's costing. I mean, again, the whole thing, no taxation without representation. I mean, you could argue, There is an argument. I don't agree with it, but I can see the argument. Like, if you're not somebody who pays taxes, maybe you shouldn't have a say in how the taxes are spent, because maybe you don't understand how frustrating it is for people. And I'm with Jim Ratcliffe on this. Well, you're paying billions in taxes over the years, and it's going on stuff that no one agreed to, no one voted for, and people are opposed to. It is extraordinary. But again, also, it's not just the green policies. Again, I think the whole green thing, that's kind of, the net zero thing's exploded. It's going to take a while, like the trans thing, to feed through the system, because a lot of these organisations are captured, and it's literally ideological capture. But I think that's people are going, you know what, sod off, cost of living, I want cheaper energy, I don't care, not interested, and quite right too. The defence issue, that is going to do away with net zero. You can either have Ed Miliband in your government, Labour, or the Greens in power, or you can defend your country. You can't do both. End of. But then you've also got the issue of Gaza and the like, and that has become such a big issue. And we have got this growing Muslim population, again, particularly people who've come from Pakistan, a huge population, where this is, according to a lot of the polling, the number one issue for a lot of these people. We saw that at the last general election. And in terms of, obviously there are by-elections, there are local council elections where we've got candidates standing, and it's all about, Gaza, it's about Palestine, and voters, will be saying, they've said at the last general election, what's the number one issue for you? Gaza, Palestine. Now, that creates a whole different set of political debates, doesn't it?
It does, and the Greens are obviously part of this picture, and we're discussing the changing demographics and the changing nature of the votes. On the left, you have seen them really lean in to what I think previously referred to as a kind of Islamo-left alliance, which you see electorally pop up.
Which is the most bizarre alliance between two sides that couldn't agree on anything other than this apparent one issue.
Exactly.
That Israel is the root of all evil, which is basically what that view is.
Exactly. And this is something that the Greens have kind of gotten away with for some time. Even before Zach Polansky became leader in the run-up to the 2024 general election, there was a Times investigation. 20 of their prospective parliamentary candidates had to be investigated, suspended, in some cases expelled, because they were found to have said some pretty outrageous things about Israel. I'm choosing my words slightly carefully. There's one example, just to illustrate it, was one of their candidates had praised a pro-Palestine demonstration which disrupted a Holocaust Remembrance Day event at Auschwitz.
Sorry, wow.
The kicker is that he was one of their diversity coordinators. But this guy was standing for election, I think, in Birmingham Perry Bar. These are the sorts of people they are attracting, and
bearing in mind they've got they plan to bring in a policy where they would make belief in being a Zionist a form of racism. But it's really interesting, because I don't think they'll be telling the local voters in any of their local constituencies, whether they are from Pakistan or Bangladesh or anywhere. I don't think they'll be telling them that you don't have a right to your own state back home. It's utterly fascinating.
And the end point of that policy would be to declare the vast majority of British Jews as racist. Which is one of the things that underpin that slur. Is one of the things that underpins anti-Semitism. I would say the majority of Britain's racist. I think the majority of Britons don't have an issue with Israel whatsoever. I have to say, nothing that's happened since October the 7th has convinced me more that and I think attacks on the synagogue in Manchester, what happened on Bondi Beach, what happened on October the 7th. Why it would be perfectly reasonable for Jewish people to think that it was necessary for them to have a homeland. It's just utterly extraordinary. And I cannot encourage people enough. If you really think that Israel is the biggest problem in the Middle East, if you're going around talking about Gaza and genocide, you're going around talking about Israel being an apartheid state, please go to Israel. Honestly, please go to Israel. See it for yourself. I promise you will. Talk to some people who know what they're doing. Talk to some proper historians that are nutters on the internet, and you will really, really understand why you are just completely and utterly wrong. This is one of the great moral debates of our time, and trust me, you don't want to be on the wrong side of it. You really don't. Talking about the Greens, energy bills in the news. We were promised, were we not, by the Labour Party, we were going to see what, a £300 fall in our energy bills, and then of course they've kept going up. But we are, as a result of an Ofgem announcement, 7 o'clock this morning, typical household energy bills will fall by 7%. That's £117 down over the year. I mean, good grief. It's not that much, is it? About £10 a month going down on the typical amount for your joint bill for your gas and your electricity. And this is basically whatever your tariff is, and this is the biggest drop since last summer when there was a £150 a year fall. But again,
our bills are still absolutely sky high. I mean, they're not, the cute £4,000 or whatever they were back in 22 or whatever, but 22, 23, but they are still way higher than they used to be.
Exactly, and they're way higher than many other peer countries across
Well, I find
Europe
that
and the
very hard to believe because Peter Mandelson, because Ed Miliband said that was not so, and if we did more wind and electricity from solar, then that wouldn't happen. So I think you must be lying, Tom.
No, exactly. And I think that where Ed Miliband is concerned, either he's misleading the public or he is such a prisoner of his own ideology that he's just can't see reality. I mean,
is he an idiot? Is he another idiot?
I think he's an ideologue. I think that, which can be, a distinction without a difference after a certain point, But it's still the case that these prices are kind of coming down from a high watermark, so therefore they can go around and say, oh, isn't it wonderful? We've reduced your bills as we said we would. But that's in comparison to them being sky high in the wake of the Ukraine war kicking off.
They've gone down from 1 million to 900,000.
It's not quite as painful as it used to be, but it's still pretty painful. The thing that needs to shift in our politics, and I think it has shifted on the right, will it shift on the left? Time will tell, is that cheap and reliable has to be the watchword where energy is concerned. Any other thing is secondary, particularly in a country which at best is responsible for 1% of global emissions, and particularly in a world in which China are still going to be opening coal power stations like it's going out of fashion.
I keep hearing that they're leading on green energy.
Yeah, they're selling us that kit.
They're selling us that kit. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. But they are mostly producing everything by much dirtier energy by coal. And either way, I don't care either way. I think that we should have energy that's plentiful and affordable. And it is fascinating the fact that the government is pushing AI. AI uses up huge amounts of energy, and every new AI platform as it develops, I think it sort of doubles its use of energy virtually every year. In fact, even more than that. I mean, we ain't going to have the energy. It's going to be a choice between running AI, which our industry is all going to be based on, such as we'll have an industry, or keeping the lights on. I wonder what the government will choose. I'm kind of thinking, yeah, you know what? Maybe we're going to have the lights go off before people go, yeah, that's not happening anymore. Yeah. Because people simply don't believe it. Let's go back to Mandelson for a bit. Arrested in the early hours on Monday, or in the evening on Monday, and then released in the early hours of Tuesday morning. And then yesterday it's emerged that he had not expected to be arrested by the police, and in conjunction to allegations of misconduct in public office related to these Jeffrey Epstein files about what he did when he was business secretary under Gordon Brown many years ago. But he'd expected to have an appointment with the police in a couple of weeks' time. They had been searching his home for a number of weeks. He had not obstructed that. It was all going to be very, very civilised. Suddenly, the police turn up his door. He's arrested. He doesn't get home till 2 a.m. Basically, the police say they were warned about him fleeing the country to the British Virgin Islands. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's just more and more damning details, isn't it? Obviously, he's disputing the claim that he was about to up sticks and get out of the country. I think people, therefore, are left to make up their own conclusions about Mandelson, but the difficulty that he's got...
A man who has struggled in the past to tell the truth.
And I think that's fair to say, a man who seems to struggle to remember what it is that he's done, who he's associated with...
Who's given him money.
Who is giving him money, where that £75,000 came from. This is not a reliable witness in the court of public opinion at this point, I dare say. And I think he's continuing... Say what you will about him. I mean, he's got a certain level of self-belief. He is a fighter. He was trying to kind of, even before...
I'm a fighter, not a quitter. Is that what he said after an election?
Exactly.
Defeat?
And just before this arrest, or just before the investigation began, I should say, he was sounding like in interviews that he was even... mulling over making some kind of political comeback. So he's nothing if not self-confident, but I think he has to realise that for many years he's been a byword for dishonesty or a general sense of murkiness in our politics. Now no one's going to believe a word he says.
No, I must stress he has not been charged with any crime as of yet. We don't know whether he will be, and he has denied any wrongdoing in a general statement in relation to Jeffrey Epstein. It's interesting though, we've had that debate in Parliament yesterday about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, about what information was going to be released about him becoming a UK trade envoy in 2001 till 2011, and allegations related to him, similar sort of stuff in terms of misconduct in public office, something he's also denied, and he also having been arrested at the end of last week. But that debate in Parliament, basically saying they want using this humble address method which the Tories had used in relation to Mandelson a few weeks ago, basically sort of demanding that the King requires the government to produce all the documents in relation to this. We're now told, they're not all going to be produced before any possible criminal trial, if there is one. Same issue with the Mandelson appointment as ambassador to the United States, because we're told by Starmer repeatedly, well, again, he did know that Jeffrey Epstein and Mandelson were still in contact until long after his arrest, Jeffrey Epstein's conviction, for soliciting an underage child for prostitution many years ago. But he did say that he'd had security vettings. He's complained about the security vetting, the Prime Minister, but he's also said that Mandelson lied to him. Now, we are apparently not even going to be allowed to see that exchange, what the security vetting said about Mandelson, and that exchange. What question did the Prime Minister ask? I think he said he asked 3 questions of Mandelson. What questions did he ask, and what were the answers, which presumably were minuted? I don't see in any way how that would in any way prejudice any possible trial if there were charges brought, and we still don't know if there will be, against Mandelson.
No, exactly. And that's the question that the authorities have to answer, because anything that looks like official caginess is going to feed the cynicism and distrust that a lot of people have in the political process, but has been revived by this pretty grubby scandal. If it gets to the point where Mandelson is charged for misconduct in public office, it seems like that will relate to things that have already been in the newspapers about passing on allegedly sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein about the sale of state assets and so on and so forth. This surely has nothing to do with whether or not Keir Starmer was as thorough as he should have been in terms of asking Mandelson about his background.
And it's not a question of question marks about someone's good character. He's already known to have been sacked from 3 jobs for dishonesty.
And he wasn't in a public office position but when this process was taking place. So the idea that could somehow relate to any future trial about misconduct in public office doesn't make a lot of sense. There's obviously security considerations.
I'm massively in favour of people being, people not being prejudiced. And I get really angry with people on social media saying, "Oh, why is no one talking about this case or that case?" There's a case involving, the fires outside the Prime Minister's home and his car. And people say, "Oh, people aren't talking about this, it's a conspiracy." No, it's sub judice. It's going to court. We're going to allow a court to make that decision based on the evidence presented in court rather than try it on social media. But that's a different thing from debate, in Parliament. I mean, who knows? PMQs is on in an hour and a bit. We're going to take it live, and we'll get your thoughts from Peter Cardwell's on it after the exchanges between the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch. But she may go on this, but then the Keir Starmer could just say, "Oh, everything's up in the air because there might be charges brought." Well, just because someone's arrested doesn't mean charges are going to be brought. And actually, I went to journalism college. We did law and everything. People seem to be taking. Both the police and the courts seem to be taking, and newspapers and broadcasters seem to take very different views in terms of. It used to be once someone was charged, then that kicked in, and it's almost become almost established that once someone might even be arrested, then it kicks in. And I'm sorry, I think it's only once someone is charged.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think, if anything, we need to have a conversation about trying to ease a lot of these restrictions rather than tighten them up, because I completely take your point. We need to make sure that trials aren't prejudiced and so on and so forth. I'm just not sure these rules are fit for purpose.
No, I think they're being used, actually, to stifle debate, which is a legitimate debate, which isn't about whether someone is guilty or innocent of a particular crime with which they may or may not be charged. Come back to the conversation on jury trials. Didn't have a chance to have much of a chat about that. Who knows? If I don't even know whether misconduct in public office would be something that would be eligible for a jury trial if and when it did go ahead for either of the 2 men who have been arrested in the last week. But we know that Justice Secretary David Lammy has basically been trying to rush through. The announcement on scrapping jury trials for all but the most serious cases, murder, manslaughter, and rape, that came out of the blue. It'd never been mentioned by anybody. It'd never been an issue. No one was pushing for it. It wasn't mentioned in the Labour manifesto. And it in no way, as not a single person who works in the justice system would say that, the big issue, jury trials. They take it as if when you have a judge panel or even a judge sitting on their own, they don't have to hear the same evidence, and in any way it slows down the process of making a decision. By the way, we have all these appeals in the High Court. They hear a case for 2 or 3 days and then they withhold their judgment for a month. I'm thinking the judges might be the problem. The jury would be able to come back. Sometimes we've had juries come back within 15 minutes. They've literally gone into the jury room. They haven't even had time to get a cup of tea before they've had a vote and gone, guilty or innocent, fine, let's go out again. Now, you can choose to have a conversation for a couple of hours, so everyone's had their say, or you can choose to just go and give the verdict. And it's just extraordinary. No one thinks this is going to solve any of the problems with delays, and it is going to raise the issue of people getting judged by their peers. Even though we have had some cases recently, we can't go into details on, where I would seriously question what the juries have chosen to do. But it's important that juries have these options.
No, exactly. They're the last defence. They're the sort of last bulwark against the tyranny of the state. This is not just high-minded rhetoric. This is why jury trials were won and cherished for so many centuries. I mean, this goes back to 1215 and Magna Carta. This is something that a previous generation of politicians you would think would consider to be untouchable, and yet the speed with which they have announced this, the fact that they're trying to push this through despite there being no mandate for it, I think is really telling about a kind of technocrat, of which there are many in this government, who on the one hand very authoritarian. They don't really care about civil liberties. They think all of this is just fluff at best or a problem at worst. They're also kind of obsessed with delivery at all costs. Doesn't matter what principles you break along the way, as long as we can speed up the court backlog by a tiny bit, then it's worth it.
And it really won't. It really won't make a difference.
Nothing is sacred to these people. I think that's it. I mean, well, there are certain things that are sacred. You know, they would rather rip up Magna Carta than the Human Rights Act. Doesn't make any sense. But
whilst they constantly say you can't change the law, but it's always about a law that was made during Blair's years. During Blair's years, those laws are sacred.
Exactly. You cannot touch
everything before that has been tried and tested for centuries.
Blair and Brown, you go near the Equality Act or the Human Rights Act, it's like heresy.
If the jury trial system didn't work, all the other countries we've exported it to would have not been continuing to use it, and we would have changed over the years.
Yeah, and it's and it's also, if every study that is done of this shows that juries are really solid system in terms of filtering out bias, filtering out any form of prejudice. I also think they serve a really important function, which is to say, even in situations where maybe, according to the law, someone is banged to rights, but they think, no, we're not having this.
And
you see that with speech trials in particular. Someone might have, under the letter of the law, committed a grossly offensive
But we're going to find them not guilty.
But we're not locking that man up.
Because we don't think this process should have happened.
As representatives of the citizenry and the community, they have that power, which is really positive and important, and we lose it at our peril.
Absolutely. And again, people, you can't get out jury duty. I know, having sat on a jury, and I'm so pleased I did. It was one of the most life-affirming things I've ever done. Genuinely, I was blown away by the process, and it's I give it up at our peril. I really think, Labour MPs, you're protesting against various different things like welfare reform and stuff. Really, this is the thing you really should force a U-turn on from the Prime Minister. Do you think there'll be a U-turn on it? Because I'm 100% sure there will be.
Yes, I think so.
Because it's Keir Starmer. I'm horribly late to go to the calls. And we're going to get straight to the calls straight after the next break. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. We will get your calls. Just some breaking news here from the Times. Mandelson being arrested yesterday, or the day before yesterday, because it was claimed last night that he had been planning to flee to the British Virgin Islands rather than go through possible legal processes here. The Times is now reporting that actually it was the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, who told police on Monday morning that he had been informed that the peer was planning to flee Britain for BVI, the British Virgin Islands. Sir Lindsay Hoyle had visited the British Overseas Territory in Tax Haven during recess last week, and he was informed by a local source that the former ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, had planned to travel to the islands. Now, this is an allegation that Mandelson, through his lawyers, has said is a complete fiction, but the source was adamant enough that Lindsay Hoyle passed the information to Scotland Yard because he said he felt duty-bound to do so. Detectives at Scotland Yard interviewed the source in British Virgin Islands before arresting Mandelson on suspicion of misconduct in public office earlier on Monday evening. They had indeed agreed to interview him early next month. Now, Peter Mandelson, of course, has denied that he said it is a complete fiction, but a spokeswoman for the Lord Speaker, that's Lord Forsyth. Now, he works in the House of Lords, and it's believed in these messages that Mandelson had written. Mandelson claimed it was the Lord Speaker in the Lords as opposed to the Common Speaker. He said that Mandelson's claim that he'd spoken to Scotland Yard was entirely false and without foundation. Absolutely extraordinary revelation there. It's the Common Speaker who was the one who basically said to the police, I believe that Mandelson is about to flee the country. Wow. That story continues to move on. Must stress, as always, that Mandelson has denied any wrongdoing. Let's get to your calls very quickly. Chris is in Berkshire. Chris, you want to talk about the jury trials we've just been talking about?
Yeah. Jury trials aren't a nice to have. They're essential. They're an essential protection. Yeah. Judges are made. Yeah. They're appointed by the state, they're paid by the state, their job progression depends upon the state, and sitting alone, believing people who are potentially innocent to the arbitrary decision-making and personal biases.
Yeah, and we saw that, didn't we, when in the post-Southport trials, when judges, everyone was just told, throw the book at them. But juries can't be told to do that.
No, juries don't have that bias. It's 12 ordinary people with the power to find guilty or innocent, despite the judge, despite the system.
Yeah, and despite any direction from the judge as well. I agree with you. I think it's absolutely essential. If other countries don't use it, well, more fool them. Chris, thank you for that very thoughtful call. Could you have a word in the ear of the Justice Secretary, please? Let's go to Craig, who is in Preston. Craig, you want to talk about the Greens, who we've been, let's face it, ranting on about all day as this extraordinary immigration policy has emerged.
Good morning, Julie. It's good to speak to you. So over the course of last year, listening to Jack Palance, it sounds like he wants to print his own money to pay off our debts. Now, that will cause hyperinflation.
Yep.
And good thing about recorded history is you can have a look back and see what has been done and what hasn't been done. And this most certainly has been done before. After World War I, after the signing of the Versailles Treaty, Weimar Germany tried to print the Deutschmark in order to pay its workers. This triggered hyperinflation. When they started, the Deutschmark was 420 marks to the dollar. And by 1928, it was just over 4 trillion marks to the dollar.
Yeah, we know it doesn't work. But again, I have to say, we've had some pretty questionable policy suggestions from some of the possible Labour candidates if Keir Starmer is ousted as well. No, just simply not understanding how the world works.
No, they don't. I've given up with Labour. I've given up with Greens. I've given up with the Conservatives.
That's interesting to hear. I think a lot of people feel that way. Craig, thank you for your call. So appreciate that. Going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to Labour MP Carl Turner about Mandelson, the Greens, you name it. It's in the news. This is Talk.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. I'm delighted to say welcoming Labour MP for Hull East, Carl Turner, to the show. A very good morning to you, Carl.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. There's so much I want to talk to you about. We've got to start with Peter Mandelson there, Lord Mandelson. His arrest on Monday evening. It is released by the police early in the morning on Tuesday. And then this statement that came out from him via his chums in the media that he was only arrested by the police and not able to attend, voluntarily in a couple of weeks' time, as he believed he'd arranged with the police, was because the police claimed that he was planning to flee to the British Virgin Islands imminently. And they had a source. He claimed it was the Lord Speaker in the House of Lords. It wasn't. It was the Common Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, apparently, who was in British Overseas Territory of BVI over last week over half-term. Nice work if you can get it, Sir Lindsay. I don't know. I'm assuming we paid for that. And he spoke to somebody there who informed him that he believed that Peter Mandelson was due to arrive and travel to the British Virgin Islands imminently. That person was interviewed by the Metropolitan Police over the weekend, and Peter Mandelson was Peter Mandelson was arrested a few hours later. What do you make of this extraordinary development?
Sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? Because we have an extradition agreement with the British Virgin Islands. I mean, the name gives it away. It's a British territory.
It wouldn't be a place you would flee to avoid standing trial if that was the case.
Exactly. You wouldn't flee to the British Virgin Islands. You would flee to a country where we don't have an extradition agreement. So I suspect it was nonsense. I'm not suggesting for a second that the Speaker of the House of Commons, if in fact it was the Speaker who made that information available to the police, was not telling the truth as to what had been said to him. I'm sure he was. I trust him completely.
But it wasn't just his. I mean, the police, by all accounts, spoke to the source in the British Virgin Islands. I mean, if it's like a random bloke in a bar going, "Oh, I hear that Peter Mandelson bloke's coming over here in a couple of weeks," that would be rather different from, say, someone who, yes, he's asked me about renting a property, or he's, I mean, we don't know. I'm not making any allegations there. But if there was something substantial, then the police would then have to act. And then Mandelson's put out denial. Mishcon de Rare, his lawyers have put out denial. But the trouble is, as we know, regardless of any wrongdoing, then he's denied any wrongdoing in terms of Jeffrey Epstein, we know that Peter Mandelson struggles with the truth on occasion. He's been sacked 3 times for lying.
Look, this goes back to the fact that he was appointed in the first place, and that is clearly a mistake, and it's a mistake that the Prime Minister regrets. But what frustrates me, Julia, about all of this is we've got all those people who were associated with Peter Mandelson are all of a sudden throwing him under a bus and pretending they've never known the guy. I find it repulsive, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, stand up and be counted. If you're a friend of Peter Mandelson, admit it. I happen to admit that I've got an association with Mandelson. Why? Because he had an association with Hull up until 2025. When the council decided to boot him out of being the High Sheriff. He was the High Sheriff. He's always had an interest in the city, I think, through his grandfather, who was a senior Labour politician. So I don't deny knowing Peter Mandelson. I don't go out.
I know Peter Mandelson, but exactly. It doesn't. It's not. We don't have guilt by association in this country. And again, people who have been friends with Jeffrey Epstein in the past, again, doesn't mean they've necessarily committed a criminal act themselves. You can question their judgment, and I've got no issue with that. Big concerns yesterday. We had that debate in the Commons about Andrew and the decision to appoint him back in 2001 as a UK trade envoy, paid by the Queen. And big expenses paid for by the taxpayer. Something of a disaster. It was known at the time, by the way. I remember reading articles about this, and certainly it was lots of talk about how he was more of a hindrance than a help in terms of representing the country. I mean, rude, arrogant, etc., etc. And we always knew he was swanning off and he was playing golf and using RF jets and all of that. But We've had this debate from the Lib Dems force using the same thing the Tories did over Mandelson in terms of requiring under the Home Rule address sort of a route all the information. We now know we're not going to see everything, either from the Mandelson appointment or from the appointment of Andrew as trade envoy and Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador. We're not going to see any of that. It's all going to be, well, a load of information is going to be redacted. Even if it goes to these individual sort of committees looking at it, it's all going to be kept sort of under wraps until we've seen the end of any, if they happen, criminal proceedings. This could mean years, and very likely long after Labour are booted out of office in 2029. Is that reasonable?
Look, first of all, I hope that we're not booted out of office in 2029, but I'm bound to say that, Julia. But you're right, this could go on for years. It's very early stages. There's innocence before proven guilty.
Absolutely.
Mandelson is not even formally charged with anything. Yep. There's a suspicion that he may have committed a criminal offence.
Which he has denied.
We're at a very early stage. It's not the easiest criminal case to get home in front of a jury. It would be a jury, even under Lammy's proposal, because it's beyond the 3-year sentence tariff. It's a difficult case to prove, actually. It's a common law offence, and there's lots of stages to go through. So it's very early stages. I suspect, and I'm guessing, this could probably take 2 years before the police are in a position to repair a file to the Crown Prosecution Service. I suspect once it gets, if it gets, to the CPS, it's going to be the Director of Public Prosecution, or at least the very senior, the most senior Chief Crown Prosecutor who makes the decision as to charge.
And that will also come down to whether it's in the public interest or not. And again, we do have a system in this country where, you know, people are innocent until proven guilty. Added to this, you know, you've got the issue of, if it does come to trial at that point, would any of the men who have been alleged at this point but have not been charged with any crimes to have committed any misconduct, would they face a jury trial? Now, your government is pushing through without any manifesto pledge, without, I mean, out of the blue it was announced a couple of months ago that they were pushing to remove jury trial, right to jury trial from pretty much everyone charged with a crime. Anything below basically, you know, murder, rape and manslaughter, you pretty much wouldn't have an opportunity to go before a jury. You spoke up about this. You've even threatened a by-election over this from Keir Starmer. We had some more detail announced by David Lammy, the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, yesterday. And part of that was, OK, there's some more extra money for more sitting days for courts, which would actually make some difference to the long delays in the courts. We know that scrapping jury trials would make sod all difference at all. But talking about pushing those measures through the Commons before the local elections, forcing them through the Lords as well, and getting it enacted very, very quickly. What do you make of that? And what are you, as somebody who's opposed to it, going to do about it?
Well, it's outrageous, Julia, isn't it? Look, there's no evidence. Leveson doesn't speak of evidence that there's a connection between jury trials and the backlog in the criminal justice system. That's not pointed out by Leveson's reports. It's a lot of work Leveson's done, by the way, but he doesn't say, look, there's the evidence. This is how we can reduce the backlog by doing away with jury trials in some criminal proceedings. It's just made up. It's pulled from thin air. I can't believe the government are taking this seriously. The reality is it'll not make a scrap of difference. And this idea, frankly, that anybody who's opposed to this, what I've called ludicrous idea, is a fan of victims of rape and serious sexual assault languishing in the criminal justice system for years and a day, is absolutely appalling, actually. It's an offensive thing to suggest. Labour MPs are very cross about that, actually, and the rebellion that is growing is getting stronger still when government ministers come out with the idea that we're all fans of the idea of victims of crime continuing to be victims of crime beyond the necessary time. Actually, we do rather well in the criminal justice system. I'll tell you what it takes. From start to finish, from charge, it's about an average of 9 months. It's not brilliant, but it ain't the end of the world. What we need
Unless
to do
it's a more serious case, because there are women who are victims of rape and child abuse where it's taking 3 or 4 years.
That's true, Julia, but it's very often pre-charge delay.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
That's the truth. It's pre-charge. And then you've got the CPS, not blaming them, but they can't get their act together. Why? because they're under the cosh. They can't make a decision on disclosures. Defence rightly say, right, what is our client alleged to have done? Give us the disclosure. Tell us what's in the unused that you're not prepared to let us have at the moment. There's all sorts of things
the problem is long before they get to the trial of any sort. Can I just ask you?
This is not political, by the way. Because let me say this. Every single government of all political persuasions, since, dare I say it, Thatcher, have underinvested in the criminal justice system in a way that has caused this.
Absolutely, 100% with you all the way on that. Carl, I've got to finish. I just want to ask you, yes or no, do you think that the Prime Minister is going to end up U-turning on this jury trial policy?
No, I think he's going to stick with this daft idea. It's the balmiest idea I've ever heard.
Is there going to be a rebellion to force a U-turn? Yes,
there's going to be a massive rebellion. I tell them, listen, this is not 20 MPs who are disgruntled about the PM being the PM, and there are them in the PLP.
This is much more serious than that. Carl, I'm going to have to leave it there, my love. Labour MP for Hull East, Carl Turner, 11:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back. We're going to be talking about that insane policy from the Greens in terms of basically illegal migrants. Come in, have a house, don't have to have a job, we'll pay you anyway. Oh, yeah, and the latest on that extraordinary development over Mandelson, that it was the Common Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, who spoke to police on Monday morning, saying that he had been warned that Mandelson was a flight risk. Extraordinary development on that story. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCown.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. Just that extraordinary breaking news. The Common Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has announced in Parliament that it was he who spoke to the police on Monday morning after returning from a trip from the British Virgin Islands in the Caribbean, a British territory, of course, clue in the name, that it was he who had been told by somebody in the Virgin Islands that Mandelson was going to flee. That was what was claimed to the Virgin Islands, and the police spoke to the person who gave them that information and then chose to, later in the afternoon on Monday, arrest Peter Mandelson. He has denied that he had any plans to flee, as have his lawyers, Mishcon Rare. Extraordinary development in that story. Who knows what's going to come up at PMQs? We'll take that live from the Commons in just a few moments' time. First up, though, let's have a little conversation about the insanity of the latest Green policy on immigration with Guy Dampier. He's a senior researcher on nationhood at the Prosperity Institute. Very good morning to you, Guy.
And a very good morning to you too.
Apologies, time is short, but I mean, it's just an extraordinary day for news today. But the Green policy looked at in the Mail, have exposed it front page. And again, this isn't something that they're vaguely considering. It's not sort of a lunatic fringe suggesting that at a party conference. This is their planned policy. Basically, no borders, open immigration, amnesty for all illegal migrants already here, reckoned to be around 1 million. My belief is that it's well more than double that. That we have no idea who's in the country. Who are we kidding? Anyone who arrives here instantly been given a home. If you're a family, you get a whole home. You get your own room. If you're a single man, if you're LGBTQI. AI plus whatever it is, you can, for safeguarding reasons, get your own property. Basic living wage, you don't have to get a job. You can work if you want to, but if you don't want to get a job, they will pay you to not work. This is properly insane.
This is probably the most far-left series of proposals that we've seen on migration. It's an open license for people to come here illegally. It would be fiscally disastrous on a level that we have probably never seen before, and it just wouldn't even be feasible on a basic level. Where are you going to find homes for these people? Yeah. Where are you going to find all the places to put them?
There's a reason why they're sharing rooms in hotels right now. But
exactly.
Also, the floodgates been open. I mean, surely we're often told we're soft-touch Britain, access to benefits, you get your hotel, you're not living on a beach in a tent as you would be in France, or, you know, and you're getting all this legal aid and all of that. That's why people come here. If that policy was well known, if the Greens were elected to the Westminster government, you would literally have millions of people stampeding across Europe to get into those boats.
To get in the boats and also to get in the planes, because one of the smaller announcements in it is they wouldn't apply any criminal charges to passenger airlines that bring people on false documents. So,
I didn't even see that bit.
There you go.
Because at the moment, airlines, and we saw this, didn't we, like COVID policy, like if you don't, you got fined, like I think the airlines were fined a couple of grand if they brought anyone into a country who didn't have all their COVID tests and all of that. So basically, it'd be a free for all.
Yeah, we would just be flying people in every single day, and then we'd be meeting them and saying, would you like a room? Would you like some UBI? Would you like to work? And by the way, even though we'll never throw you out the country and we're going to shut down every deportation centre, we're still going to give you legal aid. Even if you lost your case, it wouldn't matter.
You wouldn't need legal aid. I mean, this is. I've been saying this is like sixth form policy stuff. You know, sixth form debating society. Some little idiot in his kafir, arguing this nonsense. These are supposed to be grown-up people. They're in quite a lot of polls. They're above Labour in the polls. This is, and at the same time, parties like Reform are being accused of being extreme for just having borders. It's quite bizarre.
Well, it is, and I agree. Saying that it's extreme, for example, for Reform to say we should be removing everyone who's here illegally, that's the law. That's the law across the world.
And what everyone agreed on, apart from, 5 or 6 people living in trees, until about 10 minutes ago.
Exactly, and officially that's the stated policy of the government itself. It's the official policy of almost every party. This would just be an open expression of we want you to break the laws and we'll reward you for breaking the laws. And we know from surveys that there are quite literally tens of millions of people who would like to move here.
Yep.
You would simply flood the country. And I don't know if you noticed, but my favourite little bit was if you're there on any form of visa, apart from a tourist visa, you would also be given the right to vote. So you'd see the most extraordinary gerrymandering. The country could be flooded by people who would all be able to vote on day one that they landed.
I mean, it sounds like a brilliant plan. At least we're talking about it. At least it's being publicised. But again, this isn't a party that's on 2 or 3% in the polls. It's much harder than that. Do you think? I mean, again, we need to have these open conversations so the British public can give their views and be fully informed that this isn't a party that is, bit concerned about climate change. It's fascinating how little anyone in the Green Party talks about climate change anymore. It's all Gaza and illegal migrants.
There's only one reference to it in the migration document where they say that because of climate change, which we have naturally caused, everyone must be allowed to come if they've been affected. So anyone with weather that you'd like to go on holiday to is now eligible to come here.
That's totally it. Maybe we should all do a swap and we just all go and live in Italy or the south of France. Or, or Jamaica. I mean, maybe we just do a swap. I must ask you also about, we can safely say we know that the French have not been doing the greatest job in stopping those boats coming here. The proof is in the figures. But apparently the French are failing to stop now 2/3 of small boats crossing the channel.
Yes, so we had last year about 41,000 cross the channel. That's up about 13% on the year before. And in addition, the French managed to stop, I think, 22,000. So they stopped about 1/3 of the people that tried to cross. Obviously, it's not very much. Obviously, everyone knows that you could stick drones above every beach in France and you'd be able to spot these people, send out a rapid reaction force and prevent them. There are some human rights laws that the French have, much like we do, that cause problems for them. But there's also just a blunt admission. The French don't want these people, and it's a lot easier to let them be shipped over here.
Yeah.
Then it's our problem.
Although, of course, I've always thought the French are wrong on this, and they wouldn't have all the people traipsing through France to get here if they knew they'd be returned. We could solve this problem in 2 weeks if they and we wanted to. But the thing is, of course, Keir Starmer promised he was going to smash the gangs. Rishi Sunak said he'd stop the boats, but we haven't seen the boat stops. The gangs have not been smashed. A little sort of deal with the Chinese about we're going to stop selling certain parts of engines for these big boats. I mean, it's just utter load of nonsense. But with all that cooperation with the EU and with Macron, we haven't seen any real change at all. And in fact, any change we have seen is the number of boats and the number of arrivals going up.
Absolutely. And I think we can take the seriousness of the government. You just need to ask one question. Who are the gangs? Why won't they say? Every time someone gets arrested, they're arrested in Iraqi Kurdistan. They appear to be Kurdish gangs.
Yeah.
They appear to be based on the Kurdish asylum networks that came here in the 1990s and then settled across Europe.
Yeah.
That's what seems to be the case, but nobody in government says that. And if you look on the National Crime Agency website, they will reference these foreign criminal organisations, but they don't say who they are. Well, if the government's not willing to say who is causing the problem and where we can go after them, why are we going to the Iraqis in Kurdistan and saying, this is all coming from you guys. We know that most of the bosses are there, and we would like you to shut them down. By the way, we can probably give you their addresses.
Yeah.
We're not doing big series.
No, I never thought they were, funnily enough. Guy Dampier, it's so good to talk to you. He's from the Property Institute, the Prosperity Institute, sorry about that. Tom Slater, we've just got a minute before we go to the top of the hour. We're going to take PMQs live. Just cat among the pigeons today with this announcement from Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, that it was him, not the Speaker of the House of Lords, as had been claimed in text messages that Peter Mandelson sent in the early hours of yesterday morning after he was released from arrest by the police over these charges on misconduct in public office. He'd expected to be having a voluntary meeting with the police in a few weeks' time. He was arrested out of the blue on Monday afternoon because, we are told, the police were informed that he was going to be fleeing to British Virgin Islands. He has denied that, said it's complete fiction, and now it's emerged that it was Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, who told the police, went to the police on Monday morning, having returned to British Virgin Islands, so their source there had told him that Mandelson was planning to go there. The police spoke to that source, presumably not just some bloke picking up shells on the beach who told him that, whether it was someone who, that someone's contacting me about leasing a villa here or something like that. Who knows? And again, Mandelson has denied it, and we know Mandelson has such a great record of truth-telling, but quite extraordinary that the Commons Speaker is now involved in this.
Exactly. Another twist, another turn in an already enormous political story. As you say, it sounds like Lindsay Hoyle felt that he was duty-bound to pass on this information, which would imply that it was more than just a rumour that might have been circulating on the beach or at the bar.
It is important to remember places like this. I spent a lot of time in Antigua. Everyone knows everyone. Yeah. Everyone knows everyone and everyone's business.
So this is a fascinating development here, and I think also raises a question about how long this is going to run and run.
Absolutely. Up next, PMQs after the news. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 2 minutes past midday. Any moment now, we are going to go live to Prime Minister's questions in the House of Commons, and we'll take Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader's questions to the Prime Minister. Who knows what it's going to be about? Is she going to go student loans? Is she going to go Manderson? That extraordinary development in the last half hour, the news that it was the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, who informed the police that it was his belief that information he'd got from the British Virgin Islands, where he'd been last week, that Lord Manderson was planning to flee there, leading to the arrest on Monday afternoon of Lord Manderson, something, of course, that Lord Manderson has denied, and, of course, denied any wrongdoing in relation to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. We've got so much to talk about. Joining me today, I'd like to say, still in the studio, Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, also now joined, as we always are on a Wednesday, by talk presenter Peter Colbert.
Hi, Julia.
Afternoon to you. I mean, we're going to go straight to the Commons the moment, of course, we see Kemi Badenoch stand up, which could be just now, but extraordinary that Sir Lindsay Hoyle has got involved in this whole case.
Really jaw-dropping, and of course the suspicion was on the Lord Speaker, but it's actually the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, passing on that information to the Metropolitan Police, and Peter Mandelson very, very unhappy.
Very unhappy, putting it out in text messages to friends, which of course somehow end up getting leaked to journalists, of course, many of whom are also his friends. I mean, this story isn't going away. Do you think, if you had to put a guess on it, Kemi Badenoch's going to talk about this, or are we going to get the whole, it's all sub judice, we can't talk about it, answers from the PM?
I think a bit of Mandelson, he'll bat that back and say active criminal proceedings. I mean, he hasn't been charged, so you can essentially say what you want. There's also parliamentary privilege in these kind of things as well. Also a bit on Andrew. Remember, that was only last Thursday, his arrest. Seems a lot longer ago than
Doesn't it? But also we've got that debate which the Tories organised around Mead and Manderson, this request for information, this humble address about his appointment as ambassador to the United States. And then you've got the debate yesterday organised by the Lib Dems for appointment of Andrew as our UK trade envoy. But we've told, really, we're not going to likely get any of this information. It's going to be massively redacted, and then we probably won't see it until after if there are any criminal proceedings. This could be years. I mean, long after Keir Starmer's gone, whether it's after local elections or after a general election defeat.
Well, I just come from Westminster, and the talk there is when is this information and how much of it is actually going to come out. There are teams behind the scenes putting it all together at the moment.
I think a lot of people are going to expect that a lot of this is going to be leaked out. Do you not think?
Absolutely.
Tom Slater, do you think we're going to ever get to the bottom of all this?
Well, no, this is the other thing about this process, is that the government, and particularly the Cabinet Office, are going to have a hell of a lot of control. That's one of the things that's in the papers and people have been reminded of today, is that if there is any dispute about what should and shouldn't be redacted, ultimately it comes back down to the government and the Mandarins to make that decision.
Do we trust them? We saw even backbench Labour MPs didn't trust the government.
There's the timescale. There's also how much we're going to get.
Okay, we're going to go live to the House of Commons. Kemi Badenoch is on her feet.
Stop blocking supplies and preventing work of international NGOs. That is unconscionable, and it is costing Palestinian lives.
We come to the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate this side of the House with the Prime Minister's comments about Ukraine and Team GB? Mr. Speaker, before the Prime Minister and I became MPs, parties of every colour increased the cost of going to university. The system is now at breaking point for graduates. I believe the student loans have become a debt trap. It is time for all of us to do something about it. Will he cut interest rates on student loans?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I have to say I'm glad to learn that the Leader of the Opposition has finally admitted that they scammed the country on this. And that applies to everything they did in government. We inherited their broken student loans system. We've already introduced maintenance grants to improve the situation, which they scrapped. And we will look at ways to make it fairer. And we will do other things within the economy to help students. What other things they say? The news this morning, Mr. Speaker, 7 a.m, energy bills coming down by £117 for millions of families and young people struggling. That's guaranteed money off bills in April, driven by the action that this Labour government has taken. We promised to cut the cost of living. We are cutting the cost of living.
Mr. Speaker, I asked him if he would cut interest rates on student loans. No answer. And for the record, energy bills are still higher than when he came into office. He keeps talking about the last government. In case he hasn't noticed, my party is under new leadership. A lot of people wish his was too, including the backbenchers sitting behind him. But let's talk again about student loans and student fees even, because to win the Labour leadership, yes, with Labour together, the Prime Minister promised to abolish tuition fees. In opposition, the Education Secretary said, graduates, you will pay less under a Labour government. I wonder what happened to those people. But can the Prime Minister tell us whether graduates are paying more or less under Labour?
Well, Prime Minister. Certainly many in her party are under new leadership, Mr. Speaker. They're up there. The only change she's brought to her party is to make it smaller. And she talks about interest rates on loans. Mr. Speaker, not only have energy prices come down this morning, but since we were last here across the dispatch box, inflation has fallen as well, which has a huge impact on interest rates. Fallen to 3%, and the Bank of England say it's going to keep on falling. That's only happening because of the decisions that we made at the budget, opposed by the party opposite. They talk about the cost of living. This government is taking action, and under their watch, inflation was 11%, which crippled the state of finances for students as their loan rates went up.
Mr. Speaker, I am amazed that while we're trying to talk about student loans, the Prime Minister has the cheek to talk about my party being smaller. His party is smaller too, including one MP who was arrested for child sex offences. So perhaps before he gets on his high horse, he should ask why his backbenchers are saying that they're being called the Pedo Defenders Party. Yes. So why don't we get back? So if he... Yes, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I know it makes them...
Yes. Sorry. OK, let's have less. Go ahead, not.
I know they don't like it, Mr. Speaker.
Does the honourable member want to leave at this stage? Just understand, I want to hear the question, because it's very important that I do hear, because I may have to make a judgment. So I don't need any more shouting. Go ahead.
I know they don't like it, Mr. Speaker, but I haven't said anything that's not true, have I? So perhaps they should get off their high horse, stop making stupid jokes, and why don't we talk about student loans? Policies that may have been fine for 2012 with low interest rates are not fine for 2026. The fact is, graduates are paying more, not less. On Monday, the Schools Minister was asked on the BBC why Labour froze the repayment thresholds. She said the government has, and I quote, huge pressures. Those pressures have been created by his taxes and his borrowing to pay for more welfare. Why is the Prime Minister taking from students to give to Benefit Street?
What a nerve. Under their government, student loan thresholds were frozen for 10 years. 10 years. They broke the system. They did it with a bloke over there when they were in coalition together, and we're fixing it. Now, she used to say just a few weeks ago that she was going to focus on the economy at the exclusion of everything else. So I'm doing her a favour by bringing it back to the economy, because 117, desperate to talk about the economy, £117 off energy bills, inflation going down. The other thing that was confirmed on Friday, Mr. Speaker, borrowing is coming down, the biggest surplus on record. That means we've got the economy back under control. We're fixing the public finances. Now, I know the party of Liz Truss don't understand any of this, but she should welcome those changes when she next stands up.
Mr. Speaker, he says they're fixing the student loan system. How? He wasn't even talking about this until I raised it. The fact is, those policies...
And it goes for the row as well. Chair Select Committee expects a standard, not to shout somebody down.
Mr. Speaker...
I don't need any back chat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. He's only talking about student loans now because I raised it. He says they're fixing the problem. The fact is, he's not. Why is it that I'm willing to ditch old Conservative policies that don't work and he wants to keep them? He's not going to do anything about it at all. On Monday, they voted to increase benefits yet again. The fact is, he is taking money out of the pockets of graduates and giving it to people who are not working. It is not fair. It is not just that he is saddling graduates with debt. It's not just that he is saddling graduates with debt. Yesterday, the Bank of England, yes, where she used to work in customer services. Yesterday, the Bank of England... Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, the Bank of England said that his policies are fueling youth unemployment. That's not us, that's the Bank of England. For the first time ever, youth unemployment is now higher here than it is in the EU. And while he blames everyone else, our young people can't get jobs, they are losing hope and even leaving the country. Will the Prime Minister tell us how he plans to deal with it?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, she says she's ditching failed Tory policies. It's a very long list. 14 years of list. And it starts with the word sorry. And when she says that word, we'll take her seriously. Mr. Speaker, she talks about the Bank of England. The Bank of England have reduced interest rates 6 times. We've seen the fall in energy bills. Inflation is coming down. Borrowing is coming down. She hasn't welcomed any of that. I know she wanted to talk about the economy. She wanted to talk anything other than the economy. Perhaps she'll welcome the surge in retail sales as well. People are spending more on our high streets because of the action that we took. Wages boosted for millions of workers, opposed by the party opposite. Free breakfast clubs, opposed by the party opposite. Free childcare, opposed by the party opposite. Every measure we're taking to improve the economy, what do? They oppose it.
Mr. Speaker, he is desperate to talk about the last government so that he can distract from the mess that he is making now. The fact is, he is the Prime Minister today. This is a man who got legislation in to fix his own pension, just him, no one else's. He won't sort out student loans for other people. He has no plan to get young people into work. He has no plan to help graduates get out of the debt trap. They can complain as much as they like. These are facts. 411 MPs, and not a single one of them has any imagination. We are the ones doing all the thinking. Yes, he has already... Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has already made 15 U-turns. Will he make another one next week at the Spring Statement to fix the student loans system?
She wants me to talk about this government. Bills down under this government, £117. Inflation down under this government. Surplus up, record. Resales down. She won't welcome the economic news, but the business community is welcoming the plan. Business confidence is up. The FTSE's at a record high. The President of the British Chamber of Commerce has said this is the year our economy can turn around. Her miserable strategy of talking down the economy isn't working because Labour's got a plan for Britain.
Mr. Speaker, it'll only turn around this year if he stops being the leader. Perhaps they can do something about that. He wants us to welcome economic news. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to welcome the fact that youth unemployment is at its highest ever. I am not going to welcome the fact that unemployment has increased every single month under this Labour government. He is not doing anything about student loans because he is not governing. And he is not governing because he cannot govern. He is distracted by Labour scandal after Labour scandal. Mr. Speaker, even today now, there is an inquiry into the Inquiries Minister. That is all that they have offered since they came in. The defining moment of this man's premiership will not be breakfast clubs. It will be the sight of the man he appointed as ambassador to Washington just last year getting arrested. No wonder they're calling themselves all sorts of things. He needs to stop moaning about us and start fixing his useless government. Why should the country have to put up with 3 more years of this?
Yet again, she's shown why she is so utterly irrelevant.
Please, I want to hear the question, so do your constituents. Prime Minister.
All she does is cart from the sidelines, talk the economy down, talk the country down. In the meantime, because of our work, what is happening? Energy bills down, as announced this morning. Inflation down. Borrowing down. And what's up? Retail spending is up. Investment is up. Business confidence is up. That's the difference a Labour government makes.
Well, that wasn't exactly a rip-roaring PMQs. We've seen some fantastic performances, I have to say. Not on a political basis, just who's actually doing the job of that particular exchange well. Particularly good from Kemi Badenoch in recent weeks. But all 6 questions there about student loans, as we mentioned just before we went to PMQs Live. So joining me still in the studio, Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, and talk presenter Peter Cobble. I'll come back to you first, Peter, on this. All 6 questions on the student loans, just a little dig about Mandelson at the end. As we can always say, there's never any love lost between these two. That I really think they actively don't like each other, these two. I mean, these lines like she's so utterly irrelevant and things like that. But I mean, the student loans issue, it is a big issue. I know it affects a lot of people in this office. Young people on this. Is plan 2. Goes back years, but basically there's a cohort of people who took out loans who are ending up paying huge interest. I mean, 3%, I think, above current inflation rate. And basically, you're paying huge sums, 9% of your salary above a certain threshold, but you're paying these huge sums, and then after sort of 5 years of payments, you still owe more than when you borrowed because those interest rates are so sky high. How big an issue is this in politics generally right now? How big a vote winner is this for Kemi Badenoch?
I'm not sure it's a big vote winner for her, but it's certainly an issue that affects a lot of people, and it's one of those issues that if you're affected by it, or if you have a son or daughter or a grandson or daughter who's affected by it, you'll know about it. So the fact that she's been so vocal on it will help her to some degree. The issue is exactly as you describe, and certainly it's so unfair for so many people. There are also lots of people who don't earn over the threshold and will never pay that money back. So we're giving out lots of money to students who go to university. There's also foreign students who come in, do courses, take out loans and never pay them back, and that money doesn't come back. So it's a loser, not just for the people who are in the situation of having those loans, but also people who don't pay them back because they haven't reached the threshold. So for the taxpayer, including people who have never gone to university, this is a very bad policy and one that's not working.
This is it. I mean, talking about, students, you think, God, who cares? The thing is, you've got not just the young people themselves, and bearing in mind that 50% of people go to university now, so you're talking about half of young people, but also you've got their parents who are going, well, hold on a minute, you've got these massive debts, you can't afford to buy a home, etc. Just, Tom, I mean, I don't know, you're a little bit older than you look. He's honestly, he's about 84, but he looked like he just left university. But an estimated 5.8 million people took out these Plan 2 student loans. These are between 2012 and 2023, so long period under both coalition Tory and other Tory governments. And basically, their interest is based on the old measure of inflation, RPI, not CPI, which means you end up paying more. So it's currently 3.2%. And while they're studying, they get charged interest while they're studying. Not even once they do it, but they get charged that plus 3%. So they'd be charged 6.2%, and then you basically you can't keep up with it, and you end up with huge amounts of debt. Which just grows and grows, despite huge sums of money coming off your salary after you start earning about 28 grand, which again is just above minimum wage now. Do you think this is a vote winner?
Not necessarily for the Conservatives. I think the younger vote is lost to them for at least a generation, if they're still around in a generation's time, to try and claw some voters back.
I'm opposed to tuition fees, full stop, personally.
And I think that you could make a lot of running politically if they were more radical on that front. But I think it's a bruise to punch with the Labour Party, particularly as they're seeing younger voters, graduates, people in their 30s, people really caught up in this totally dysfunctional system. It's been a ticking time bomb ever since it was introduced.
You've got a load of debt, you can't buy a house.
And also for the system itself, because of the fact there's going to be so many people who will never pay back these
including
loans.
People from the EU who can come here. But if you're in England, in Wales, you have, if you go to university in Scotland, I remember my daughter was looking at Scottish University, you have to pay tuition fees. They get it for free, subsidised, by the way, by English taxpayers. You're welcome. But the EU people, they can come here and they can pay the same fees as British people. and then they disappear off, and we don't chase them up, and then they don't have to pay the fees.
Well, there are billions that have never been paid back, both by EU and other foreign students, and often, I mean, finding someone...
Why should anyone be eligible for a loan who's not from this country? I think it's utterly perplexing.
The whole system doesn't make any sense, and it's going to be a big electoral problem, I think, particularly when you've got the Labour Party, which is losing votes to the Greens, and that sense of kind of generational grievance amongst graduates. The idea that not only do they have to pay all of this money, but also the graduate premium, such as it is, the idea that you go to university in order to do better in life.
And they often don't get a job at the end of it.
Exactly. And certainly not a job that is a graduate job. That said, I was doing a lot of temping and waitressing after I graduated. I mean, again, it's interesting she chose to do this, go talk about this, Tom, because... You know, the issues of Peter Mandelson. She touched on Peter Mandelson at the end, saying, look, people aren't going to be talking about what the successes, if any, of the Labour government. They're going to be distracted by the latest Labour scandal. You know, Mandelson being arrested. She also talked about Labour backbenchers, referring to the Labour Party as the pedo defenders party because of various appointments, but also, you know, another Labour peer who has campaigned for someone who was later convicted but already been charged with a paedophile offence on the doorsteps. It's, you know, it's not looking good, is it? But do you think it was the right decision to go on student loans rather than on that particular topic?
Well, it's a tricky one because of the fact that the government is hiding behind the fact that there is only so much you can say about these cases, given the fact that they, you don't want to prejudice any kind of future trial. That said, I think there is more room to push the government than maybe we saw there, because a lot of these questions don't surround the misconduct in public office allegations. They're about the Prime Minister's own judgment in terms of appointing Mandelson, even with what we previously knew about him, his relationship with Epstein, his track record. So I think there is more room that she could have pushed there, but clearly decided that it wasn't worth it, because you'd probably just get Keir Starmer repeating the same lines, the same kind of
and that's the thing.
Over and over
you can imagine they were thinking that's worth doing, but actually having to ruling it out, Pete, on the basis that you get Keir Starmer as a former director of public prosecutions and a KC. I'm afraid I don't want to comment on anything. I don't want to prejudice, and he would get away with that.
Yes, he would. Yes, he would.
Even though, and again, it's the same issue we've had with these debates about getting hold of information. You know, the appointment of Andrew yesterday was subject to debate as trade envoy. The appointment of Mandelson only in December 2024 as the UK ambassador to the United States. And we're now told an awful lot. This information will be released, but actually a lot of it's going to be redacted. It's going to go to select committee. Information is going to go to the police, and we're not going to find out pretty much any of it until after if there are any criminal charges. And yet, you know, what Peter Mandelson was vetted over and what Peter Mandelson said or did not say that was true or not true to the Prime Minister during that interview process has no relevance whatsoever to any possible and still not actually started criminal proceedings against him in relation to Epstein, surely.
You're right, and certainly we've had this bizarre spectacle in the last 24, 48 hours as well of the question you've got to ask yourself is, who do I trust least? Is it the Metropolitan Police or is it Peter Mandelson? They've both lied on various occasions, and we have this narrative of what has happened over the arrest, which isn't clear. We've had what the Commons Speaker has said. Will the Metropolitan Police come clean on what they were told when and what actual evidence was there? We know what the Speaker has said, of course, and it's fascinating from Mandelson's perspective and also Starmer's from a judgment perspective as well. Yeah.
For people just tuning in, the extraordinary revelation in the last hour is that Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, actually announcing in the Commons, after information had got out, that it was him as the Commons Speaker who had given information to the Metropolitan Police on Monday morning that he had information when he was in the British Virgin Islands over half-term break and over parliamentary recess that Peter Mandelson was planning to travel to the British Virgin Islands. But this has been denied by Mandelson and indeed by his lawyers, Mishcon Terrer, and the police, though, did choose after Lindsay Hoyle went to the police on Monday, and after the police spoke, by all accounts, to the source in the British Virgin Islands, decided to arrest Mandelson, and one of the conditions of his police bail is that his passport has been taken away. Tom Slater, that is such an extraordinary development in this story, but it is fascinating that Sir Lindsay Hoyle has chosen to give this information, because we will wonder, surely him giving that information in confidence to the police, I'm not sure why we would have ever known that unless there was a court date.
No, exactly. The fact that, first of all, that he felt duty-bound, in his words, to let the police know about this, but also the fact that it's come out so quickly. I think it shows, first of all, there's just so much around these investigations which is just leaking left, right and centre. I think there's also the clear sense in which the police, and this is where some of the differing accounts from the Mandelson side and the Metropolitan Police side come in, they're clearly very twitchy about not being seen to go easy on Mandelson, not being seen to give an easy ride to a member of the establishment, that's probably informing maybe decisions that were maybe more hastily taken.
But again, if they didn't have a record of of letting, Jimmy Savile, just let that go away. Because he's only raping children. It's not a big deal. He's part of the establishment.
They don't want this to become a story about the Metropolitan Police going easy or presiding over a situation where Mandelson.
But I agree with that. I think they're overcorrecting.
As always. By the way, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has asked a question in the last few moments, asking the Prime Minister whether the government. He doesn't get a chance to ask me. He's argued that he should have more questions in the Commons. He doesn't get chosen to speak often enough with his position in the polls. But he said, with a government full of human rights lawyers, why do the human rights of Chagossians not matter to him? This, of course, after Chagos Islanders returned to the islands and basically said, we are not leaving, and issued deportation orders. Keir Starmer replied by attacking Farage for not sacking a Reform UK councillor who shared a Facebook post saying a Labour MP should be shot, and then criticising Reform's by-election candidate. I'm not quite sure why that's relevant to Chagos. I think this is one of the things that's most frustrating to us. People are entitled to answer, but you can ask me, Julia, what's 2 + 2? And if I say the answer is yellow, I'm not answering the question. I know I'm not answering the question. You know I'm not answering the question. Everyone listening knows I'm not answering the question. The frustration people have, and it's all Prime Ministers. Every now and then when a Prime Minister actually answers yes or no to a question, people go, what?
Yeah.
The whole Commons goes, what? What just happened?
Disorientates the whole place.
But this whole, being asked a question about, say, student loans, as Kemi Badenoch did 6 terms to the Prime Minister, and then going on and on about energy bills. I think people are getting really fed up with it. I don't know why Prime Ministers or ministers ever think of any political party that not answering questions is a good look.
It's a very good point. The point I suppose they would make behind the scenes anyway is if you give the actual answer and you say, yeah, it's a fair cop, student loan system is very disorganised and really bad, yeah, we need to fix it, and I haven't done that so far, well then you look bad.
Absolutely. I'm going to let you go. When are you next on air?
7 o'clock tonight. 7
o'clock tonight. Stay tuned. You should stay tuned anyway. Lots more brilliant shows this afternoon. Peter Cobble on tonight. Let's take a quick break. We'll get your calls. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:30 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls and all the topics we've been talking about. 0344 499 1000. You can have your thoughts on PMQs. You can give your thoughts on Mandelson and extraordinary development. The Commons Speaker is the one who spoke to the police. Indeed, we're talking an awful lot today about the Green Party and just the extraordinary revelations about their planned immigration policy. Basically, genuinely. Have you ever heard a debate from some sixth formers who are a bit thick? And haven't got a clue how the world works. Yeah, treble it. Quadruple it and quintuple it. We're talking about immigration policy where people basically, anyone, come on in, no question at all. Whether you come in legally on a plane and you overstay your visa, whether you come in illegally on a boat. Oh, by the way, 450 illegal migrants apparently because of the nice, lovely weather today. It's a bit warmer, the seas are a bit calmer, are coming across the boats. On boats across the channel right now at this moment. That's how well those gangs have been smashed, folks. But anyone arriving here will basically be given a free home. If you claim you're LGBTQI or whatever it is plus, you will actually get a home of your own, not even having to have a room of your own. You will be given a free basic universal income, so you can either get a job and work free, you can use the NHS, etc., or you can just literally not work and you'll be paid to not work, buy money from you and me, I guess. We are looking at literally millions of people getting on planes, getting on boats, getting in cars, getting through tunnels, whatever they're going to have to do to get to this country for the free-for-all. Properly insane. Let's find out what you think about it. 0344 499 1000. Jason is in Wiltshire. You want to have your say, Jason. I imagine you think this is a brilliant policy and you'll be voting for it.
Yeah, good afternoon, Julia. Thank you for taking the
Thanks
call.
for calling.
I hope you're well, keeping good.
Good, yes, thank you. I mean, I was until I sort of, you know, spat up my cereal when I saw this story this morning.
Yeah, I know it's a bit of a shocker, but well, it's sold to me. I've remortgaged the house. I'm now going to become a major donor of the Green Party. I'm absolutely loving the idea of me working my butt off to pay for a load of immigrants or people from the lgbd.com/hyphen whatever it is community to come and live for nothing. I just don't see what your problem is.
I mean, what's not to like? I mean, the universal basic income is enough of a giveaway. The no borders people are mad. The universal income, basic income people are mad. They keep doing trials for this. I sort of don't understand how people can find themselves thinking these are good plans, these are good ideas. These things have been tried. They don't work.
Well, this definitely isn't going to work. I mean, people say people on the right of the agenda are dangerous with things that they come out with, but the people on the left doing stuff like this, I mean, they want to bankrupt the country. I don't really know what they want to do.
Well, that's a good point, because as soon as I finish saying that, they don't work, these policies. Well, it depends what your aim is, isn't it? It's like us saying, you know, not agreeing with some of the, you know, the net zero policy. They don't work. Well, they do work if you genuinely want to break capitalism. You want people banned from travelling and buying new things.
It's becoming a social network. It's become socialism or communism. If you want to car crash a country, you're going to go. It's a brilliant way of doing it.
Yeah. Well, because people aren't going to work. I mean, all the studies show. You go to, I mean, again, I think a lot of these people have never been to a communist socialist country. People don't work hard if they don't think they can accrue the benefits to themselves and their families. They may want to. I mean, I'm perfectly happy to pay taxes for people who aren't as lucky as me and able to work and need help. I think that's a moral duty. It's what civilised society is about. But I'm very, very unhappy about giving money to people who could be working and are choosing not to. But if basically you've got millions of people who are able to choose to do that, and by the way, that universal basic income will be available to everyone, I'm sure. At that point, people just go, well, I won't bother then. I just won't bother.
No, but something else that really annoys me with these lefties is they love the idea of all this, of the asylum seekers, the illegals and all that lot, but not in my back garden. How many of these have you actually seen, like, come stay in my spare room, I'll fund you, do this, do that? They don't.
No, exactly. They always talk a good game. And again, you know, on every single policy, when it actually starts affecting them personally, and we know again and again, you've got all these people who are the evangelical Greens. I mean, not that they talk about green issues very much anymore, but the ones who, whether it's Just Stop Oil or whatever, people shouldn't fly, people shouldn't drive. There they are on their ski trip. There they are on their aeroplane to a Caribbean island. You know, rules for thee, not for me.
I know exactly what you mean, but it's don't do as I do as I say. But always. I do hope you are setting your direct debit up for that Palensky, Julia. I hope you're going to be contributing to this.
I have to say, someone did, a couple of years ago, actually apply in my name to be a member of the Green Party, which I was very tickled by. I'm not going to lie. Fortunately, they rejected me, and I'm utterly gutted. Jason, thank you for that. Lots of messages coming in on that as well. Harper says Zach Polanski, of course, leader of the Greens, is an unelectable maniac. Only a lunatic could get behind him. Ben says this is already what Labour have done with illegal migrants. Fair point, Ben. Yvonne says insanity. This is typical Marxist behaviour. David says crime shouldn't pay. It's in the name. Illegal. But they don't believe anyone's illegal. Do keep up with the project, David. Also, he says there's no such thing as free. Taxpayers will be paying for it. A point I was making to the chaps in the studio, by the way, when Keir Starmer was yapping on in PMQs about how free childcare, free breakfast club. They're not free. They're free like the NHS. It's not free. I never go to the NHS and I'm grateful. I don't walk past going, I'm so grateful my bins are collected. I'm so grateful there's streetlights. I've paid my taxes to pay for these sodding services. Andrew says, They are literally mad. And Penny says, how does protecting the environment go hand in hand with an open border? A bigger population means we will have to build more, upsetting natural ecosystems. Rose says, this is crazy. We haven't got enough money for the people here already. We need to put Brits first. Let's go to another caller now. Dave is on the line. He's in London. Dave, you want to talk about that subject that was the main topic of PMQs between Kemi Badenoch and the Prime Minister, and that was student loan debt. What did you make of that debate?
Yeah, hi Julia. Well done, Kemi. There, Mr. Starmer was expecting 6 softball questions on the economy, which he'd been prepared for, and then she bowled him out with 6 on the student loans.
He would have been he would have been briefed that student loans was an option because it's been in the news. She's been on G&B talking about it and.
Yeah, clearly he was briefed, but he's not actually intelligent enough to be able to swerve when the ball swerves. Anyway,
this is true. This is true.
The main issue with these student loans, and there's been 3 or 4, but the main one was when they decided to say to universities, you can charge up to £9,000 for a course, and the expectation was that if you were studying engineering somewhere, you'd be paying £9,000, and if it was media studies and 4 hours a week lectures, it might be 2 or 3. And the universities, they all said, oh, this is good news. We'll charge every single course at £9,000, whatever it is. Now, my point is, I could cost every single course at every single university within the UK in less than a week.
Yeah.
All you have to do is say, tell me what the course is, how many hours are face-to-face.
What equipment do you need? Medical school or...
No, don't need that. You just go face-to-face to start with. And so if the face-to-face of the lecturer is 4 hours a week, which some courses are, by the way, it's as bad as that, then they can charge up to £2,000 a year, and that's for the end of story. If they're doing 45 hours face-to-face, they can charge £9,000.
But it won't be that. I mean, even Oxbridge don't do 45 hours face-to-face.
Well, fine, then they can't charge £9,000. End of story. If I need a plumber and they're coming here to do a 10-hour job, I'm going to pay £1,000.
Yeah, but a lot of the work in university is supposed to be you on your own. Look, the thing is, £9,000 doesn't cover an engineering course or a chemistry course or a medical course. It doesn't. But it definitely more than 10 times covers a media studies course. The main thing is, I don't think we should have tuition fees at all. And I think we should just halve the number of people going to university. Well, certainly, unless you're going to study something useful, you're not able to get a loan. You want to fund yourself to do some Mickey Mouse degree where you do no work and have a pointless piece of paper at the end, fill your boots. But we, the state, are not going to help you do it. That, to me, but if you're going to do something useful that is for your course and it's a proper subject, then we will help you. That you can solve the problem like that.
Fine, but if you're going to make that kind of statement, I want to make sure your daughter does not go to university. Rule her out then. But you won't, because you'll say...
Why?
Well, because you'll go, oh, my daughter's doing a course that's worthwhile.
Well, she is at university right now, but I would also have rules about the grades you have to get into university. Or you could do foundation courses. My husband did a foundation course after leaving school at 16 to get to uni. But I don't think that people who've got 2 grade Ds at A-level should necessarily, unless they can prove a particular reason for that, should be going to university. No, I'm an elitist. I think universities should be elitist, but it shouldn't be based on elitism because someone lives in a stately home. It should be elitist based on academic ability.
Yeah, I never mentioned stately home, so I don't know where you got that from.
No, I know, but I'm not saying. No, I'm just saying it's not. I'm not saying it should. Elitism gets a bad rap. It should be elitist. It should be the cleverest, most academic people. Yeah, and academic and clever are not necessarily the same thing.
I have no issue with that, but then you're going to have people say, well, a history degree at Oxford is the ones you need. No, it isn't. Don't need it. Clear off. So you're only then going to end up with people saying if it's at Oxbridge, then it doesn't matter what the course is.
No, but I think it's about academic rigour. I think that's the issue.
Yeah, in terms of getting in, and yes, and of course we don't need 50% going, but don't forget the government have to then say to be a policeman you need a degree, to be a nurse you need a degree. So they then have to engineer the course, the job market, in order that they could accommodate the ridiculous amount of people they'd put through university.
Yeah, no, fair point. Dave, I'm being told I've got to go to a break. I've got to squeeze one in before topic. Dave, great to have that conversation. Thank you very much. You're talking a lot more sense than anyone in government, that's for sure. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Afternoon, sorry. Welcome back to the show. 12:43 is the time. Tom Slater. I mean, we're going for it, hammer and tongs there, me and Dave. That student loan thing, do you think that is going to explode? That is going to be a big story? Or again, is it just sort of an easy one for Kemi Badenoch to talk, go for the Prime Minister on? You perhaps wouldn't expect it to be 100% about that. And especially after, of course, that exchange that she had with Martin Lewis on G&B went completely viral.
No, I think it's something that she wants to run on. I think it's part and parcel of the Conservatives trying to position themselves as the serious policy people dealing with the issues that are affecting people's living standards. I don't think this is a vote winner for them. I mean, the base of the Conservative Party...
People. 5.8 million, doesn't it?
Exactly, and
million?
so it does affect a lot of people, and also it doesn't just affect those younger people, it also affects their families, and people can see...
Parents care a lot about this stuff.
They do. So I think there's some sense in that, but I suppose if it had a political use, it was to put Keir Starmer on the defensive about not just about this issue, but youth unemployment, which is at record highs, and to make him look useless, which is not that hard these days, but this is a useful issue on which to...
No, indeed. And again, look, we've got a by-election coming up in Gorton and Denton. Let's not mention any of the candidates. We've got local elections coming up in May. I mean, that, you know, it's already near the end of February. That's coming up very quickly. There are lots of things where lots of moments where things can go very difficult, go badly wrong for the Prime Minister. I mean, even the developments on Mandelson. At the end of the day, if he hadn't appointed Mandelson as ambassador to Washington and brought him back out of the coals, this would be a story that would be about the poor judgment of Blair giving him a job, him being sacked and then appointing him again and then sacking him. Gordon Brown giving him a peerage, bringing him back. I mean, it would be a problem for former Labour Prime Ministers, not the current Labour Prime Minister. And he, through his own lack of good judgment, basically, and apparently, Mandelson, as he has claimed, lied to him. He said, but we're not going to see those documents. We're not going to know what was asked, and, you know, before if there are any criminal proceedings. Again, any wrongdoing has been denied by Mandelson. But this is now on his desk as a problem of his, which it wouldn't have been if he hadn't appointed him.
And
they're all like he's created all of these issues himself.
No, he just continues to punch himself in the face. I mean, that has been the story of this entire premiership. He raises a controversial policy, loses all the political capital, then has to U-turn on it and gets none of the credit for it. We've seen that story repeat itself time and time again. He makes terrible decisions, or actually more importantly, refuses to make decisions, outsources decisions to a Morgan McSweeney or someone else because he doesn't really have much of a political feel or much of a worldview about things, and then these things come back to bite him. The only thing keeping Keir Starmer in place at the moment is, first of all, the dearth of good alternatives, and also the fact that it's pretty much nailed on that there is an assumed lurch to the left that would take place in the wake of any Keir Starmer leadership challenge. And that will make the markets quite jittery. We've already seen that when Andy Burnham pops up and says something about not being in hock to the bond markets, the bond markets respond quite badly.
I don't think you get to choose that.
So the only thing holding him in place are negative things. There isn't. Well, you know,
Angela Rayner and Wes Street, you know, aren't ready yet. Andy Burnham's not in Parliament again yet. I mean, that's the thing. It's just everything's just waiting. It feels like the entire Labour Party and the entire country is sort of sitting there waiting, really, for the end of the local Scottish and Welsh elections. Well, you know, what's going to happen then? And we're all kind of sitting there. In the same way as we were waiting for that, remember that very late budget, the first budget from Rachel Reeves, and everything was waiting. And then last year's budget, again, waiting for that. And everyone's just, the whole country sits there just on tenterhooks waiting. And then decisions aren't made and things don't happen.
No, because we can't stay in this holding pattern forever. I think Keir Starmer wants to, because he's desperate to hold on to his position that he's, you know, lusted after for so much of his political life. But we're just going to be bound to have more and more dysfunction because this is a government that can't govern, that can't really command a proper majority in a House of Commons.
Which is weird with the majority. They've got 403 MPs.
Exactly. I mean, that's the biggest blockage to them getting any legislation for is their own MPs.
Yeah, absolutely bizarre. Just that, you know, there's actually, I mean, virtually empty House of Commons as it usually is when the PMQs isn't on, but there is basically a debate now, sort of a motion, emergency motion about the plight of the Chagosians. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, has been on his feet again, and government has said that they do have sympathy for their plight. And of course, I mean, again, human rights, it would depend on whose human rights we care about at any one time, wouldn't it? Going to take a quick break now. Up next, we're going to be talking about the latest madness from the government when it comes to trans ideology in our schools. I think we all know there should be no trans ideology in our schools at all. But we had Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary and Equalities Minister, saying that she thinks that boys should be allowed to wear dresses to school, even in primary school, if they want. Is this woman stark? I mean, it's everyone we're talking about today, stark staring mad. We'll talk about this with Sex Matters. Maya Forstatter up next. This is Talk.
Join me, Rob Jenrick, on the Jeremy Carr Breakfast Show on Talk.
There's a lot of harm happening in the country right now. People feel like the country's in a mess. Why is it so difficult for this Labour government to just say what a woman is? To believe in basic biology and common sense. Take away these human rights laws, which have got completely out of control now. You know, I do believe that economies can be fixed and you can get catch-up growth. On illegal migration, we're very clear. We're going to detain and deport absolutely everyone who enters our country illegally.
Ring in, ask me any question, I'm here to answer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:49 is the time. Let's talk about, as I say, the latest madness in our schools. Because apparently the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, who's in charge of equalities as well, thinks that boys should be allowed to wear dresses to school. Dresses obviously often the girls' uniform. The boys don't wear dresses because it is the norm in our society that boys don't wear dresses. And let's talk about this with Maya Forstatter. She's Chief Executive of Sex Matters. Good afternoon to you.
Hello, Julia.
On the face of it, one could argue, when we say, look, I don't really care what anyone wants to wear, I mean, as long as you're vaguely appropriately attired for the job you're doing or whatever, or the weather, I don't think it makes any difference whether a boy's wearing a dress or trousers or shorts. Does it? You know, girls wear trousers and shorts and it doesn't bother anybody, and that's traditional male attire. Would it be an issue if a boy turns up to school wearing a dress?
Well, it depends on the school. It depends on the school uniform. If the school doesn't have a uniform, then, as you say, children can turn up wearing, you know, fairly much anything. But if the school has a boys' uniform and a girls' uniform, then, you know, schools are quite careful about their uniform. They check what kind of socks children are wearing. And in that situation, if a boy turns up in the girls' uniform, he's asking to be treated as a girl. Yeah. And I think this is where Bridget Phillipson has fallen down. Of course, you know, if a boy wants to put on a dress in the dressing up corner in primary school,
yeah,
nothing wrong with that. But what we shouldn't be saying is that boy is socially transitioning. That boy is asking to be treated differently from other boys.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. You know, if a girl, I mean, I'm thinking, I've only had a daughter, but we had lots of friends who had boys and things. But my daughter wants to dress up as Buzz Lightyear. It doesn't mean she actually thinks she's an astronaut, or indeed that she is a boy who's an astronaut. I mean, that's not how it works. And girls will dress up as superheroes who are male. And you probably see less of the boys dressing up, perhaps in more female clothing, because perhaps the parents steered them away from it. It's more socially acceptable for girls to kind of wear pretty much what they want. You can dress in what has been traditionally viewed, maybe in the 1950s, as male clothing, but would be considered completely normal female clothing now. But there is still a lot of people do have an issue with a man dressed up in what would be judged as traditionally women's clothing. And I sort of wonder to myself, why does that bother me? Why would I not want someone turning up with a man in lipstick and heels, clearly a man, but using female clothing? But it is the issue here that it's about the message that the child and the other children get about rules, about uniforms, or about this social contagion, this look at me. And it does, a lot of, we know the trans thing is social contagion, and a lot of it's also being different, wanting to get attention and things like that. Is that more of the concern?
I think it's both. I mean, clothing is just clothing, but dresses are not clothes for boys. You know, if you sent your daughter to primary school in a skirt and her skirt got, you know, paint on it or something, and they put her in something from the lost property and she came home in trousers, you'd think fine. Yeah. But if that happened to a boy and he came home in a dress, you'd think something is odd here. There is something...
Is that because we'll be told we're all bigoted?
No, it's because dresses and skirts are not conventional clothing for boys and men, and for men we know that it can be a sexual thing. You know, if you see a man dressed up as a schoolgirl, that's not just clothing, that's a fetish. So, and then you have rules. You know, in the same way in a hospital, the surgeons, the doctors wear a different outfit from the nurses and from the orderlies. That, you know, they're just different colours of scrubs, but if you switch over the colours, terrible things could happen.
Yeah, there are rules, and it's interesting you talk about the fetish aspects. That's something that actually perhaps I've steered away from to a certain extent, because again, when we get called transphobic just for saying a man can't become a woman. You've had plenty of this over the issue. Basically, you lost a job as a result of this, and I've been a fantastic fighter on this front as a result. But there's quite a lot of evidence. Again, there are people who genuinely have body dysmorphia, and they genuinely do believe in their heart of hearts that they have been born in the wrong body. Now, they have not been born in the wrong body in the same way that someone who believes that I've got too many limbs because I've got two isn't born with too many limbs. They're just simply not born in the wrong body, but they may genuinely feel that. There are people who, as we know, particularly also, you know, sexual predators who pretend that they think this so that they can gain access to women's safe spaces and to you know, get into women's prisons and get a softer sentence in an easier prison and things like that. But there is also this group which are, it's fetishists who get a kick out of wearing women's underwear or wearing women's clothing, and get a kick out of the power play of that. And this is increasingly something that is being talked about, and perhaps increasingly something that we should openly be talking about. It that actually a lot of the time, and again, maybe not so much in schools with much younger children in primary school, but actually saying that yes, men can wear this clothing. You're basically saying, please wear your fetish interest in public, at work, on public transport, and we'll all have to say that's fine when we wouldn't think it was fine in any other circumstance.
Exactly. And lots of people have odd things that turn them on. That's fine.
Fill your boots,
private life, but don't bring it to work. And that's quite different from a boy dressing up in a princess dress in primary school. You know, these things shouldn't be confused.
Well, it's very interesting, actually. I know somebody whose grandchild was a boy, was wearing a dress and was, I would think, being encouraged by the mother. And the question was, well, you know, do you know that you're a boy? Yes. But then you need to wear a boy's uniform. And it seems to me it's like those parents who say, I mean, if you want to take your kid to the supermarket in a Batman outfit, that's fine. That's fine. But you perhaps wouldn't take them to a funeral wearing a Superman outfit, because you have to wear appropriate clothing. We often have to wear it for work, for a wedding. You know, you wear don't wear a denim jacket to someone's wedding, I would say was a basic, you know, requirement, looking smart, things like that. And is this actually a lot of this also? There's parents who are just basically saying, yeah, my kids can just do whatever they want.
I think it's come from the schools. I mean, if the schools hadn't gone down this road of socially transitioning children, then you know, most parents, I mean, you choose the school your child goes to, and if freedom of expression is more your thing, then you send them to school with no uniform. If you send them to school with a uniform, you expect your child to follow the uniform.
I don't think a lot of parents have much choice. Also, schools can change a lot. They get a new head teacher and then, you know, all bets are off.
That's true. I think a lot of the responsibility is on schools. They should never have said that they could socially transition.
No. Well, a lot of responsibility is on education secretaries too, as we've discussed with you and many other of your members of Sex Matters. They should just enforce the law, which is very, very clear about men and women and boys and girls.
Absolutely.
What would be so hard about that, eh? Mayor Frostadt, Chief Secretary of Sex Matters, thank you so much for joining us. Tom Slater, is this an issue? I mean, is this an issue for people to get their, boys or girls knickers in a twist?
Well, I think it's because it feels part and parcel of the general kind of social transitioning, that all those issues at school.
There's an agenda.
Yeah, I think we all know that that's the primary demand that's being made here when the whole boys and dresses thing comes up. It's trying to get round what we thought was the kind of clear change in direction around these issues, which is that this stuff should have no role in school.
And by the way, for decades and decades since we've had public schooling, whether a boy has wanted to wear a dress but has not been able to, I'm not entirely sure that they're finding it that hard.
No,
I find it very strange. Anyway, Thomas, thank you very much. Great to have you here throughout the whole show. I'd like to say Ian Collins is here in a suit, I'd like to point out.
Should be delighted, yes. When you say in a suit, was there somebody... Did you do a suit thing?
No, we'll just talk about, appropriate clothing for the moment.
Yeah.
Which is very dashing.
Side dig at me.
Well, no.
At
least your shirt's ironed. Well, I think
it's not really.
No, his shirt is not ironed today. Write in and complain.
Yeah. I've got my letter to Ofcom already. So, yeah, Lindsay...
We should have better sound. And I want your hair not past your collar. Yeah.
Lindsay Hoyle will dob you in it, that's for sure.
What do you mean? That has totally...
It was Hoyle. We always suspected Hoyle. Excuse me, can I speak to Police Constable Smithers, please? I've got something to tell you.
Good accent.
Yeah.
But, I mean, genuinely, it's quite the most extraordinary
Well, it's also,
revelation.
everything about it is a bit weird, because apparently if he was going to go to the Virgin Isles, which is British territory,